Chapter 925. Heavens, what is such a huge sword? What kind of weapon is it? Why is the sword so huge? I've never seen or heard of such a huge sword ever since I was born. Who will be able to wield such a big sword? This sword is not to be underestimated. I can actually sense a powerful sword energy from it that makes me tremble in fear. There was nothing else on the third floor of the palace apart from the large sword stuck in the center. The sword stood there like a king, so it naturally attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's gazes gathered on the sword as they discussed spiritedly. Their faces were filled with shock. Basically, all of them knew about the existence of ruler armaments. Perhaps an extremely small number of them recognized king armaments, but there were extremely few people who recognized emperor armaments because they were just far too rare. Even on the Tianyuan continent, there were not many saint rulers who knew about the existence of emperor armaments, let alone in the sea realm where humans were rare. Jianshun, do you think this sword is the legendary emperor armament? Nubiz's voice rang out from beside him. His gaze toward the emperor armament was filled with great shock. He had never seen an emperor armament before, but there were records of it in his inherited memories. Jianshun nodded slightly. His gaze toward the emperor armament burned with desire. His desire to possess it became more and more intense. In his entire life, he had never felt such a strong desire to possess something. I have to obtain this emperor armament, Jianshun thought. His gaze became extraordinarily determined. I know what it is. It's actually an emperor armament, Tisnek suddenly cried out. Disbelief filled his eyes. He had also recognized the emperor armament. Emperor armament? What emperor armament? I've never heard of it before, an old man beside Tisnek asked in doubt. He was filled with curiosity. Tisnek sucked in a deep breath and slowly said, I've only learnt about the emperor armament from my inherited memories. The emperor armament is the saint weapon of the human emperor. It's extremely powerful, capable of destroying the world. When a human emperor reached the end of his lifespan, he left the saint weapon behind. What? Was the sword left behind by the human emperor? If that's the case, does the sword bear witness to the death of a human emperor? Heavens, it's actually the weapon of a human emperor. If I could use it, I wouldn't even need to fear 15-star experts. Everyone was in an uproar. A weapon left behind by a great emperor of the human race was enough to make everyone jealous. Although the people of the sea race couldn't use the weapons of the human race for some reason, its value and preciousness were unquestionable. Suddenly, Tisnek turned to Jianshun. His gaze sharpened at that moment, and he said, Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you obtained a throne completely forged from god-tier crystal before obtaining the cultivation method of the Blood Demon Emperor. You've benefited far more than any of us, so I hope you won't interfere with this human emperor armament. Jianshun coldly stared at him and emotionlessly said, Do you really think the emperor armament is that easy to obtain? If you have the ability, then go take it. Jianshun could not help but think of the scene of him obtaining the saint weapon. The saint weapon had been left behind by a holy emperor, so it was much weaker than the emperor armament. However, he needed to push the power of the chaotic body to the limit in order to wield it, or he would only be injured by the weapon, let alone the emperor armament that was much more powerful than the saint weapon. Jianshun understood that it was probably impossible for him to touch the emperor armament with his current strength. Otherwise, he would not be able to avoid being injured by the weapon even with the protection of the chaotic body. Swish! At this moment, there were a few gusts of wind. A few experts could no longer resist the temptation and charged toward the emperor armament. A cold gleam of light flashed through Tesnik's eyes. He furiously roared, You're looking to die. With that, two blades immediately appeared in his hands as he pursued the people with heavy killing intent. Although Tesnik was very powerful, there were quite a few hidden experts present as well. Many of them did not fear him, not to mention that they were currently facing the great temptation of the emperor armament, so their fear for Tesnik was reduced to a minimum. As a result, the experts who charged for the emperor armament completely ignored Tesnik's words. Instead, they sped up. Many of the experts present could not help but become tempted when they saw that people had already begun to fight for the emperor armament. They wanted to join in as well, and even MOG, Xia Wang, and the others struggled to remain calm. However, Jianshun and newbies stood there calmly. They did not plan on interfering at all. Even though that was the case, the two of them still stared at the Emperor armament closely. Finally, the experts approached the Emperor armament, but at this moment, a formation rapidly appeared on the ground. It flickered with a dazzling red light, and an invisible energy immediately permeated the air, blocking all the people who charged toward the Emperor armament. They were just about to obtain the Emperor armament, yet something like this happened at such a crucial moment. This made the experts who were close to the Emperor armament go mad. They felt like a huge treasure had been placed right in front of them, yet they were unable to obtain it. This filled them with reluctance. Boom! Boom! Intense rumbling sounds spread far and wide in the empty palace. The experts were doing their best to attack the invisible energy that was blocking them. They wanted to break through the barrier and obtain the god artifact. However, no matter how hard they tried, they were unable to break through the invisible energy that was blocking their path. This invisible energy was like an incomparably sturdy barrier, blocking them outside. No matter how hard they tried, they were unable to take a single step forward. Tesniak's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He instinctively stopped and stared at the Emperor armament with a frown. However, his face sank very soon. He said with a heavy voice, "I never thought that the Emperor armament would actually be trapped by a seal. The requirements to break through the seal are actually so harsh. Looks like we'll have to pay a heavy price to obtain the Emperor armament." Jianshan slowly made his way toward the Emperor armament. When he approached it, a line of small words suddenly appeared before his eyes. When he glanced past the words, his face immediately became rather sunken. A cold light flickered through his eyes. The Emperor armament has been sealed here. If you want to break through the seal, you'll need the lives of 49 experts. That was the content of a line of words. The other experts arrived one after another. All of them saw the small line of words carved on the ground. Their expressions changed, and they immediately scattered in all directions. They became even more vigilant. The atmosphere in the hall immediately became tense. Just at this moment, a series of footsteps rang out. Several dozen more experts walked over from the entrance to the third floor. They were all people who had been healing at the edge of the barrier. After several days, they had finally made a full recovery. When they saw the 30-meter-long sword, all of them became stunned. However, they learned about the Emperor armament and the method to break through the seal very soon, so they immediately became cautious. They gathered together in groups of 3 or 4 as they stared at the surroundings cautiously. The Emperor armament actually needs the lives of 49 experts to break through the seal. The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands clearly wants us to kill each other. Is the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands using this method to choose the strongest among us so that they can inherit his legacy? Someone guessed, but their guesses made everyone's eyes light up. They found it to be more and more likely the more they thought about it. Perhaps this really was how the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands chose the person who would inherit his legacy. The legacy of the 8 Wastelands belongs to me. I'll use this opportunity to get rid of some people so that they won't cause any more trouble in the future. A cold light flashed through Tesnik's eyes. He immediately swung his blades at the person closest to him. "Tesnik, what are you doing?" The expression of the expert drastically changed. He immediately retreated as he drew his weapon to block. Tesnik was the ruler of a clan, so his battle prowess was extremely great. Although he was still a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler, his battle prowess was no weaker than the Holy Emperor at the 1st heavenly layer. He could even rival the Holy Emperor at the 2nd heavenly layer. In just a few clashes, he had slain the expert, wiping out his soul. With the death of the expert, all his blood immediately fused into the ground and vanished. At the same time, one of the 49 inscriptions in the hexagram that trapped the Emperor armament had shattered. I must obtain the Emperor armament. I'll kill anyone who gets in my way. A cold light flickered through Jinshin's eyes as well. He immediately pulled out the Saint armament from his space ring and charged toward the 5 experts who stood together. As soon as Jinshin struck out, newbies obviously did not want to fall behind. His hands immediately turned golden, and they flickered with excitement as they charged out as well. The Saint armament in Jinshin's hand turned into a dense blur that enveloped the 5 experts. Even though the 5 of them put up a desperate fight, it was impossible for them to be Jinshin's opponent. The Saint armament had only clashed with them a few times before heavily injuring them. They all staggered back, and before they could even stabilize themselves, a sword had pierced their foreheads, wiping out their souls. Jinshin took the space rings of the 5 of them before charging toward the next opponent. Battle intent burned in Newbie's eyes. He fought against 2 experts of the same level as him barehanded. His fists were filled with dense, poisonous gas, and golden threads would shoot out from them from time to time. In the blink of an eye, he had heavily injured the 2 of them before piercing their foreheads with the golden threads, wiping out their souls. In the blink of an eye, almost 10 experts had died in the hall. Every time an expert died, their blood would disappear into the ground. At the same time, one of the inscriptions in the hexagram would shatter. The palace fell into a chaotic battle. The peaceful tacit understanding between the people had been broken. They began to fight with all kinds of motives. Among them, there was no lack of enemies or hostile forces with deep hatred. At this moment, they were all using this occasion to settle their grudges. Chapter 9:26. A tremendous pressure suddenly appeared. An expert had already begun to charge up a Tian-level Saint technique. His 3 opponents were firmly tied down by his companions, giving him precious time to charge up his technique. The Tian-level Saint technique was completed very quickly. It quickly locked onto the 3 opponents before being unleashed with devastating might. It directly reduced the 3 opponents to pieces, causing blood to spray into the air. More and more experts were dying as the battle raged on. The Tian-level Saint techniques were unleashed one after another. Very soon, more than 30 experts had died. Their bodies and souls were destroyed, and even more were injured. The ruler of the Turtle Clan and Tiznik are far too powerful. They're the most troublesome opponents. Let's work together and surround them. We need to eliminate them, someone called out. Someone yelled out in the chaotic battle, immediately attracting the attention of many experts to Jinshin and Tiznik. That's right. We need to eliminate the 2 of them first, or the legacy of the 8 wastelands will end up in their hands in the end. In order to obtain the legacy of the 8 wastelands, we need to kill the ruler of the Turtle Clan and kill Tiznik. More and more people began to call out. None of them were stupid. They all understood that they needed to eliminate the 2 most powerful people if they wanted to obtain the legacy of the 8 wastelands. Immediately, over 40 experts began to charge toward Jinshin and Tiznik. Every single one of them was filled with killing intent. Another 4 people with Tian-level Saint techniques hid far away and began to prepare their Tian-level Saint techniques. Their targets were also Jinshin and Tiznik. You're looking to die. MOG. The 4 of you go deal with the people who have used the Tian-level Saint techniques. Keep them busy, Newbies called out as killing intent surged in his eyes. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas that enveloped 100 meters around Jinshin. The poisonous gas possessed extremely powerful corrosive properties. Anyone who entered this region would be corroded by the poison. They were forced to divert a portion of their power to block the gas, which would affect their strength. Jinshin possessed the body of immunity, so he was especially immune to the venom of the silver-striped golden snake. As a result, he remained unscathed within the area enveloped by the venom. He was not affected at all. MOG and the other 3 did not interfere. The chaotic battle earlier had left them in a rather horrible shape. They gathered together and watched the battle from afar. They did not listen to newbies and deal with the 4 people who had used the Tian-level Saint techniques. Jinshin's eyes were cold. The Saint weapon in his hand shone with a black light as it killed the 3 people at the very front with a devastating presence. Afterward, he charged out of the crowd as a blur. He used the illusory flash to shoot toward the people who had used the Tian-level Saint techniques. At the same time, Tiznik charged out of the encirclement as well. He shot toward the 2 people who had used the Tian-level Saint techniques with lightning speed. Whether it was Jinshin or Tiznik, the Tian level saint techniques posed a huge threat to them. They needed to stop them as soon as possible. Two of the four people who had used the Tian level saint techniques targeted Jianshan, while the other two targeted Tiznik. As a result, Jianshan and Tiznik had an extremely clear division of labor. They only needed to eliminate the people who posed a threat to them. Seeing Jianshan and Tiznik charge over, the faces of the four people who had used the Tian level saint techniques changed slightly. Immediately, the power of the Holy Emperor surged out from their bodies, condensing into armor on their bodies. At the same time, they rapidly retreated, wanting to put some distance between them and Jianshan and Tiznik. How dare you use the Tian level saint technique on me, Tiznik? Are you tired of living? Tiznik had already approached the two people who had used the Tian level saint technique on him. His twin blades transformed into two streaks of light as they slashed toward the two of them. At the same time, Jianshan approached his target as well. His emperor weapon turned into a streak of black light as it stabbed toward the foreheads of the two people. Tiznik's blade struck one of them, sending him flying. The Tian level saint technique that was in the middle of charging up was forcefully interrupted. The other person's body was cut in two, but no blood flowed out. His severed limbs quickly turned into stone. It's actually the Stone Python clan's fossilized puppet technique, Tiznik said with a deep voice. He looked ahead and saw that the expert he had cut in two had already appeared 1,000 meters away and scathed. He did not stop casting the Tian level saint technique either. It had already reached its end. A tremendous pressure immediately descended from the sky, firmly locking onto Tiznik. On the other side, Jianshan's emperor weapon stabbed into the foreheads of the two people. The attack that was equivalent to the third heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor immediately shattered the armor condensed from the power of the Holy Emperor. Without giving them any time to catch their breaths, he stabbed out two more times with lightning-like speed, piercing their foreheads and wiping them out. Jianshan removed the space rings from their fingers and stowed them away without even looking at them. He looked at the hexagram array that sealed the Emperor armament and saw that 40 of the 49 inscriptions had already been destroyed. He only needed to kill 9 more people and the seal would break. Jianshan was in no hurry to kill them. Instead, he looked at Tiznik. Now that the Tian level saint technique had finished charging up, he wanted to see just how Tiznik would block it. Jianshan had already witnessed just how terrifying the Tian level saint technique used by a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler was. It could even heavily injure a 2nd heavenly layer holy emperor or even kill him. Even if Tiznik doesn't die this time, he'll be heavily injured. He's no longer a threat to us. Once he's injured, we'll work together and kill him. Eliminating a powerful opponent will greatly reduce our resistance in the fight for the legacy of the 8 Wastelands. Quite a few people had such thoughts in their hearts as they looked at Tesniak with eyes full of schadenfreude. Tiznik's eyes were icy cold. He stared at the Tian level saint technique that had finished charging up. At this moment, it was already too late for him to use the technique to block it. He snorted coldly. Do you think you can kill me with the Tian level saint technique? You underestimate me far too much. I'll show you how I destroy your Tian level saint technique. A surging power of the Holy Emperor surged out from Tiznik's body. It was extremely powerful. A terrifying pressure immediately filled the entire hall as soon as it appeared. Just the energy was enough to suffocate many people present. This is the power that an expert on the level of a Divine Hall Elder left on Tizniki. To think that Tizniki had such a terrifying power hidden within him. How is this possible? Tiznik's actually hiding such a great power, so Tiznik has been hiding his strength the entire time. This is probably his greatest trump card. Everyone was discussing spiritedly as they looked at Tiznik with solemn gazes. With the power left behind by the Shrine Elder, Tiznik undoubtedly had plenty of bargaining chips. If he did not exhaust this power, no one would be able to threaten him. This is power that only a 9th heavenly layer Holy Emperor can use. I wonder how much of the Holy Emperor's power is left in Tiznik's body. Jianshan stared closely at Tiznik as his face became unsettled. Tiznik was surrounded by powerful and pure Holy Emperor's power. It rapidly condensed into a meter-wide ball of energy before him under his control. Afterward, it shot towards the person who had used the Tion-level Saint technique with lightning speed. At the same time, the expert unleashed the Tion-level Saint technique that he had already charged up. A huge halberd appeared and shot towards Tiznik with devastating power. Bang! The Holy Emperor's power clashed with the Tion-level Saint technique, immediately producing a violent explosion. Berserk shockwaves wreaked havoc in the surroundings, forcing the two combatants to retreat. A set of armor appeared on Tiznik's body. The ordinary Holy Emperor's power in his body had already been used up. This set of armor was condensed from the power of a 9th heavenly layer Holy Emperor. It resisted the Berserk shockwaves with the power of the armor. At the same time, with a point of his finger, a strand of the Holy Emperor's power shot out from his fingertip, directly shooting towards that expert. At this moment, that expert was continuously pushed back by the Berserk shockwaves. He was unable to control his body at all. The armor condensed from the ordinary Holy Emperor's power had already dimmed. The Holy Emperor's power in his body had already been used up. He was simply unable to resist the even more powerful Holy Emperor's power shot by Tiznik. Spurt. The expert's forehead was pierced. As soon as the Holy Emperor's power entered his head, it exploded loudly, blasting his head to pieces. His soul was directly wiped out. Another one of the 9 remaining inscriptions in the Emperor Armament's hexagram had shattered. Only 8 of them remained intact. A vicious light flickered in Tesniak's eyes. He ignored the space ring on the corpse and slowly turned his head to look at the group of people in the distance. His face was filled with killing intent as he roared. "Since you want to kill me, I, Tesniak, will not spare you." With a flash, Tiznik charged toward the group of people with lightning-like speed. He was actually challenging so many experts all by himself. However, he was protected by the power of a 9th heavenly layer Holy Emperor, so the attacks of the regular experts were unable to do anything to him. In the blink of an eye, another 8 people died to Tiznik's hands. The remaining 8 inscriptions in the hexagram array shattered one by one. Boom! Suddenly, a violent rumble rang out. An extremely powerful sword chi suddenly appeared, filling the entire space in a mighty manner. It actually caused the entire divine hall to violently tremble. The sudden change interrupted Tesnik's slaughter. At that moment, everyone could not help but look in the direction of the sound. All they saw was the 30-meter-tall Emperor armament slowly rising from the ground, hovering in the air. It radiated with a presence that seemed to look down on the world, as if it was the greatest existence in the world. "The seal on the Emperor armament has been undone. Go and steal the Emperor armament." Chapter 9:27. Even though many people had become bewildered by the allure of the Emperor armament, there were still a few people who did not take part in the fight. Instead, they watched from afar. Jianshun, Newbies, and Xiaowang were one of them. MOG's group of 4 had charged over long ago. Newbies coldly stared at the 4 of them as they charged toward the Emperor armament. He gently said, "The 4 of them aren't anything good. Be careful." Jinshin nodded slightly and said nothing. At this moment, something strange happened. The Divine Emperor suddenly shone with a dazzling light. Afterwards, he actually attacked on his own without anyone controlling him. He turned into a streak of light and shot towards a group of people charging at him with unbelievable speed. Immediately, 3 Saint rulers were unable to react in time. The Emperor armament passed through their bodies, cleaving them in half with their noses as the center. They did not even have the time to cry out before their souls were wiped out. After passing through the 3 Saint rulers, the Emperor armament continued toward the walls of the palace without slowing down at all. In the end, it heavily struck the walls. Boom! With a deafening sound, the entire palace began to violently tremble. All the experts in the palace almost lost their footing and fell to the ground. With this, all the experts who had become bewildered by the Emperor armament finally calmed down. They all stared at the Emperor armament in shock as disbelief flooded their faces. None of them would have thought that a weapon that no one was controlling would actually fly up on its own. Furthermore, It contained such terrifying power that it caused the entire palace to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. The Emperor armament constantly struck the walls of the palace, producing violent booms. It caused the entire palace to tremble, but it was not damaged at all. Although it still possessed great power, it was nowhere near as powerful as the Holy Emperor. It could shake up the palace, but it could not destroy it. It wants to escape. Jianshin stared at the Emperor armament that constantly struck the walls of the palace as he softly murmured, "Does the Emperor armament possess a mind of its own?" Newbies asked curiously. He found it hard to believe. "I don't know, but I've heard about the legends of ruler armaments in the past. All ninth heavenly layer saint rulers will leave behind their saint weapons when they reach the end of their lifespan. The saint weapons contain a sliver of their vital energies, so they hope that they can be resurrected in the future," Jianshan said softly. Newbies' eyes narrowed. "Jianshan, are you saying that the reason why the Emperor armament is so intelligent is because of the Holy Emperor's soul hidden within the Emperor armament? The Holy Emperor is still alive?" Jianshan shook his head. With his hands behind his back, he raised his head and stared at the Emperor armament. He said, "I'm not sure either, but the Emperor armament is so powerful that it's not something I can control right now unless my strength increases." As soon as he said that, Jianshan's expression suddenly changed. He saw the powerful and sharp sword chi from the Emperor armament shoot toward where they stood. "Be careful, dodge," Jianshan cried out as he dodged into the distance as a blur. Newbies and Xia Wang, who had been paying attention to the Emperor armament at all times, did not slow down either. They dodged to the sides at the same time. Boom! The Emperor armament viciously struck the spot where the three of them stood. The violent ripples of energy blew the three of them away. "Arg! My arm!" Xia Wang cried out in pain. The Emperor armament was just too fast. He was slightly slower in dodging, so his entire left arm was chopped off. Blood spurted out like a fountain from his severed arm. The Emperor armament did not continue to attack Jianshan, Xia Wang, and Xia Wang. As soon as it struck the ground, it immediately shot into the sky, striking the ceiling of the hall heavily before turning back and continuing to shoot toward the ground. This time, its target was actually the experts scattered in the surroundings. "Run!" The experts all paled in fright. They used everything they had to escape from the Emperor armament's range of attack. However, the Emperor armament was just too large, so its range of attack increased by a lot. Another expert died to the Emperor armament because he was unable to dodge in time. The Emperor armament was like a headless fly, smashing around in the hall. It became extremely agitated as it tried to break through the tough walls and escape. Under its aimless attacks, all the experts in the hall suffered greatly. They all fled for their lives in horrible shapes. Very soon, several experts died to the Emperor armament, while over a dozen people were injured. Tiznike stared at the Emperor armament closely. He was extremely stern. Soon after, the surging power of the Holy Emperor surged out of his body once again, forming a set of armor that protected every inch of his body, only leaving his eyes exposed. The armor on his hands was even thicker than before. Tiznike leapt up and quickly arrived at the hilt of the Emperor armament. He directly opened his arms and tightly hugged the thick hilt in an attempt to subdue the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament suddenly paused before a powerful sword chi erupted. It enveloped Tesnik as a dazzling white light. With a series of cracking sounds, Tesnik's armor was immediately covered in slashes, covering his entire body. The defense of the armor was rapidly being weakened. Reluctance filled Tesnik's eyes. He suddenly bellowed out, and the power of the Holy Emperor surged out of his body, replenishing the energy of the armor. A space ring appeared in his hand, and he wanted to put the Emperor armament in there. The Emperor armament immediately resisted, refusing to enter the space ring. No matter how hard Tiznike tried, he was unable to put the Emperor armament into the space ring. Unable to break free from Tiznike's entanglement, the Emperor armament charged through the palace with Tiznike. It constantly smashed into the surroundings, and the huge force of the recoil stacked on Tiznike, tormenting him to the point of excruciating pain. If it were not for the armor, his organs would have been reduced to dust long ago. Even with that being the case, it was still very painful for Tiznaiki. Many experts in the palace suffered as well. All of them were reduced to horrible shapes by the emperor armament that was flying around. They suffered heavy casualties, with less than 20 people still alive. Half of them were injured as well. Tiznaik's power of the Holy Emperor had been severely depleted, so he could not last much longer. He reluctantly let go of the hilt of the emperor armament. However, the emperor armament did not stop there. It continued to fly around the palace, constantly smashing into the surroundings and producing deafening booms, causing the palace to constantly tremble. God damn it, the emperor armament has basically gone mad. Newbies arrived before Jianshan. He stared at the emperor armament as he panted slightly. He angrily cursed. The emperor armament had left behind a bone-deep wound on his back. Jianshan remained silent. He stared at the emperor armament closely. He then opened his hand, and a golden light immediately shot out from his forehead, landing in his hand. It turned into a palm-sized golden pagoda. Right now, he could only use a saint artifact to successfully subdue the emperor armament. As for the sword spirits, their current strength was not enough to fend off the emperor armament. If the emperor armament had produced an artifact spirit, it would obviously be intimidated by the sword spirits. However, Jianshan knew that it was impossible for the emperor armament to produce an artifact spirit. It was extremely likely that it was a sliver of the holy emperor's soul. At this moment, the emperor armament turned and shot toward Jianshan again. Newbies let out a strange cry. He did not dare to hesitate at all, immediately dodging far away. However, Jianshan did not choose to dodge this time. Instead, he stood there calmly, waiting for the emperor armament to arrive. Just when the emperor armament was 10 meters away from Jianshan, a white light suddenly appeared. Jianshan had already notified the artifact spirit to open the door to the saint artifact. When the 30-meter-long emperor armament shot into the white light, it immediately vanished, having entered the artifact space by itself. Newbies, protect the saint artifact well, Jianshan said to newbies through a communication technique before entering the artifact space himself. The artifact spirit that had been waiting in the artifact space had already begun fighting the emperor armament in the air. The artifact spirit was the absolute ruler of the artifact space, a true expert of the Holy Emperor. Even though the emperor armament was very powerful, it was still a weapon in the end, so it was no match for the artifact spirit. It was subdued by the artifact spirit without any effort at all. It was currently firmly gripped by a huge hand conjured by the artifact spirit. No matter how the emperor armament struggled, it was unable to break free. In the blink of an eye, the arrogant emperor armament had entered the artifact space by accident and fallen into the hands of the artifact spirit. The artifact spirit used the power of the saint artifact to suppress the emperor armament, stopping it from struggling. It then arrived before Jianshan and politely said, "Master, I've already suppressed the emperor armament. However, the emperor armament is very powerful. You probably won't be able to control it with your current strength." Jianshan did not mind at all. Excitement filled his face as he said, "There's no rush. I'll be able to use it very soon. Once my chaotic body breaks through to the third layer, I'll have enough power to control it. I just wonder how much my battle prowess will increase once I reach the third layer." Jianshan was filled with anticipation. At the same time, he secretly swore that he would break through as soon as possible once he left the divine hall of the 8 wastelands. "Artifact spirit, I'll leave the emperor armament here. Look after it for me. I'll be heading out first." Jianshan did not dare to remain in the artifact space for too long since the dangers outside had yet to be dealt with. He left very soon. When Jianshan emerged from the artifact space, he saw newbies and Xie Wang surrounded by over a dozen experts who had managed to survive. Every single one of them was hostile. Jianshan had expected a situation like this long ago. As a result, he was not too surprised. He first accepted the saint artifact from newbies before looking at Xie Wang. He said, "Xie Wang, don't resist. I'll send you into the artifact space. Your arm will recover completely there." Immediately, A milky white light shot out from the Saint artifact and enveloped Xiao Wang. Xiao Wang did not resist. He was instantly sucked into the artifact space by the power of the Saint artifact. Afterward, the Saint artifact turned into a golden streak of light and shot into Jinshan's forehead before disappearing. Seeing this, Tesnik and the other experts immediately became stunned. They all stared at Jinshan's forehead with a strange light in their eyes. Disbelief filled their faces. They had never seen something like this before, nor had they ever dared to imagine that something could be stored in a person's head. Moreover, it was such a large pagoda. They could not help but feel curious. They had no idea how such a huge golden pagoda had managed to make its way into the forehead. What had happened before them had completely overturned everything they knew. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, what is that golden pagoda of yours? It's so wondrous. Tesnik stared at Jinshan closely as he asked curiously. A sliver of extremely well-hidden greed appeared in the depths of his eyes. Tesnik, may I ask what is the meaning of this? Jinshan glanced past everyone with a sharp gaze. He answered with a question instead of an answer. His voice was cold. Tesnik became slightly angered when he heard that. He growled, Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I'd like to properly ask you about this. Not only did you obtain the huge god-tier crystal on the first floor, which is priceless, but you also obtained the Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation method on the second floor. You've benefited far more than any of us, yet you've shamelessly taken away the Emperor armament on the third floor. Aren't you going a little too far? Towards the end, Tesnik's voice could not help but become sharper. He had paid a huge price for the Emperor armament. He had used up so much of the Holy Emperor's power that even made his heart ache. That was no ordinary Holy Emperor's power, but something left behind by a Hall Elder. It was extremely precious. After paying such a huge price, not only did he fail to obtain the Emperor armament, it had even ended up in Jinshan's hands. How could he not be furious? Jinshan's face sank. His gaze became extremely sharp in a single moment as he stared at Tesnik. He coldly said, Tesnik, please watch your words. You didn't have the ability to subdue the Emperor armament, so you can only blame yourself for not being strong enough. You can't blame anyone else. Are you going to stop others from taking it if you can't take it? Tesnik's face sank as well. He stared at Jinshan fearlessly and gritted his teeth. All right, it's me who didn't have the ability to subdue the Emperor armament. However, ruler of the Turtle Clan, let me give you a piece of advice. I hope you don't regret it. Some treasures aren't that easy to use. Jinshan sneered disdainfully. I, Jinshan, have never regretted my actions. However, Tesnik, I must warn you that it's best if you don't threaten me. Or do you believe that you'll end up like them and never be able to leave the Divine Hall? Jinshan's voice was filled with heavy killing intent. He wanted to kill Tesnik. Tesnik's eyes suddenly narrowed. He snorted coldly and said nothing more. He turned around and left, making his way to the fourth floor. His gaze had already been replaced by coldness as he thought. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, let's just wait and see. We still don't know who'll end up as a corpse here. After Tesnik's departure, the other experts all left as well. They all maintained a certain distance from each other as they made their way to the fourth floor. In the end, only MOG and the other two remained. The other person had already died to the Emperor armament. Ruler, Tesnik is not simple. You have to be careful. MOG acted like he was concerned. His face was filled with worry for Jinshan. Jinshan only nodded in response to MOG's concern. He did not say anything else before calling out to newbies and making his way to the fourth floor. The three of them looked at each other. They could obviously sense that Jinshan's attitude towards them had changed slightly. The three of them hesitated before silently following Jinshan to the fourth floor in the end. That Tesnik sure is arrogant. If it weren't for the fact that we were running low on people and that we might need them to break through the barrier later, the great newbies, would have killed him long ago, Newbies said through gritted teeth as he walked. Chapter 9:28. Jinshan and Newbies made their way to the fourth floor together. Behind them, Moji and the other two followed closely. The three of them could sense the change in Jinshan and Newbie's attitude towards them. Along the way, they constantly explained what had just happened. Jinshin's group quickly made their way to the fourth floor. They discovered that the fourth floor was empty. Tesniak and the others were nowhere to be seen. They were not there either. There's nothing here. Let's continue to the fifth floor. Jinshin glanced around and said calmly. He then continued to make his way to the fifth floor with newbies. They did not encounter any obstructions along the way. There were no formations or barriers blocking their way. The palace had a total of 9 floors. The fifth floor was still empty. Next, Jinshin's group cautiously made their way up. They directly passed through the 6th and 7th floor before making their way to the 8th floor without any obstructions. The 8th floor was still empty. However, there were a few spots where the space was hazy. It was a sign that the formations had been activated. Through the hazy space, they could vaguely make out some trapped figures. Everyone, including Tesniak, was trapped within the formation space. 30 meters ahead, there was even the corpse of an expert lying there. He had died to the formations here. His blood had dried up, having been sucked away by the divine hall. Be careful, there are formations here. Jinshin's group came to a halt when they saw that. They stared ahead sternly. The formations here are very powerful. They're much more powerful than any of the formations we've encountered before. Let's stick together. It's best if we don't split up. Once we come across formations that we can't break through, we can work together to break through them, Jinshin said sternly before cautiously making his way forward. The formations set up in the palace were extremely profound. Although their power had greatly weakened due to the erosion of time, some high-level formations still retained a lot of their power. There was only one way to go from the 8th floor to the 9th floor, and that was to pass through the obstructions of countless formations. There was no other way. Even flying was not an option. There were hidden formations everywhere on the 8th floor, making it impossible to guard against. After taking 10 steps, Jinshin's group was trapped by a formation that suddenly appeared. At the same time, a violent boom rang out. 100 meters ahead, Tesniak and a few other experts had already broken through a formation, revealing themselves. As soon as Tesniak emerged from the formation, he immediately discovered Jinshin's group. Heavy killing intent immediately flashed through his eyes as he thought, "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I'll let these formations waste away a little more of your strength. I definitely won't let you leave here alive. The Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation method, the Emperor armament left behind by the human Emperor, and the golden tower in your head are all mine. No one has the right to take them from me. Once I obtain the legacy of the 8 wastelands, your life will come to an end." Tesniak and the experts who had secretly reached a tacit agreement continued to advance, and soon they were once again trapped in a formation. Although Tiznik had made everyone his enemy not too long ago, there was no such thing as an eternal enemy in this world, only eternal benefits. Under such circumstances, he once again joined hands with several powerhouses, all for the sake of passing through the 8th floor and reaching the 9th floor. Of the 160 experts who had entered the divine hall of the 8 wastelands, only a dozen or so remained. Many of them were injured. They were currently split into 3 groups on the 8th floor. Other than Jinshin's and Tesniak's groups, there was another group that had also entered a formation. They were currently working hard to break through the formations. The formations on the 8th floor became more powerful the further they went. The 3 groups all tried their best to break through the formations because all of them believed that the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands would be on the 9th floor. As long as they could reach the 9th floor first, they would be able to obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands. As a result, the 3 groups all used every second they had to break through the formations. They were afraid that the other 2 groups would surpass them. 2 whole days passed. Although Jinshin's group was smaller in number and they had come for fun, they had Jinshin and newbies, 2 supreme experts who could rival the Holy Emperor, among them. As a result, they broke through the formations much faster than the other 2 groups. After 2 days of competition, Jinshin's group had completely caught up to the other 2 groups. Currently, the 3 groups had arrived in the middle of the 8th floor. They were only half a distance away from the entrance to the 9th floor. Seeing how Jinshin's group had caught up, The other two groups secretly became anxious as well. They immediately sped up as well. All of them wanted to be first. The power of the formations behind them continued to increase, and the speed at which they were advancing became slower and slower. Previously, they only needed to combine their strength to break a formation, but now they had to use all their strength to break a formation. It took a lot of effort for them to break a formation. Boom! With a violent rumble, another powerful formation was broken through, revealing Jianshan's group. Jianshan wielded the Saint weapon. Black light surged from the weapon as it was surrounded by a layer of dense chaotic force. It radiated with a destructive presence. Behind Jianshan were newbies, MOG, and Heiyu. After breaking through so many formations, they were exhausted. They had expended a lot of energy. The formations are constantly becoming more powerful. Will there be formations that we can't break through at all? Newbies asked with a deep voice. He was very stern. Basically, all the formations they encountered were trapping formations and killing formations. It would be fine if they encountered trapping formations, but they would be in danger if they encountered powerful killing formations. Jianshan turned around and glanced at the other two groups nearby. He lowered his head and pondered for a while before leading them forward. After taking around 10 steps, they were trapped in another formation. The 8th floor of the palace was basically a place filled with formations. There were so many of them that it was unimaginable. No matter which direction they took, they would be trapped in a formation in less than 10 steps. Faced with the endless formations, Jianshan had considered using the White Tiger's ability to ignore all formations and barriers to directly enter the 9th floor. However, after coming to the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall, everything that Jianshan had gone through had changed his opinion of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall by a lot. He had always had a thought that the Divine Hall was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Entering the 9th floor might not be to obtain the legacy of the 8 Wastelands Emperors. Instead, there might be other unknown dangers waiting for them. As a result, Jianshan gave up on using the White Tiger. Instead, he used the same method as them to slowly advance. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. During these 3 days, they advanced at an extremely slow pace. They had not even covered a third of the remaining distance. Now that they had reached there, Jianshan and the others needed to stop and recover the energy they had used up whenever they broke through a formation. Even newbies was no exception. Only Jianshan remained brimming with energy, showing no signs of weakness at all. Jianshan had gone through many battles already. As long as he did not exhaust himself like he did in the City of God, the chaotic force within him would be enough for him to use for a very long time. This was because every strand of chaotic force was extremely powerful, so he consumed it much more slowly than regular people. The power and profoundness of chaotic force could not be measured by ordinary energy, because it was a supreme energy of the world. There was no energy that could rival chaotic force in the universe. However, the chaotic force Jianshan possessed right now was not true chaotic force. The chaotic body had been divided into 18 layers by the sword spirits, and each layer was a metamorphosis. Only when Jianshan's chaotic force reached the 18th layer would it become true chaotic force. At that time, the power of chaotic force would be completely unleashed. With the help of regular pills, they only needed a day to recover. They then continued on their way, breaking through the formations. By now, Tesniak had already taken a step ahead of them. They had all consumed high-level pills, so they recovered much faster. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months passed. After 3 months, Jianshan's group finally made it through the remaining journey. They stood before the entrance to the 9th floor. They were currently in horrible shape. Their clothes were in tatters, and their faces were pale and haggard. They seemed like beggars. Even Jianshan was the same. Apart from Jianshan, the others were all injured. They had been on the brink of death many times during this period of time. Tesniak and the other group made their way out at the same time. All of them were in horrible shapes. Their tattered clothes were stained with blood. Clearly, they had suffered greatly under the formations. Both sides had lost people. They had all died to the formations. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, Above us is where the legacy of the 8 wastelands lies. Only one person can obtain the legacy of the 8 wastelands. I just don't know who will obtain it in the end. Tesniak emotionlessly said to Jianshun before coldly glancing past the people in the surroundings. He knew that their alliance was only temporary. They only wanted to make it to the final step. Once they were faced with the temptation of the legacy of the 8 wastelands, they would all become enemies. There would no longer be any friendship between them. However, the only person that Tesniak truly cared about was Jianshun. He did not care about the others at all. Jianshun said nothing. He glanced past everyone, whether intentionally or not. In his eyes, there was not a single person who could stand here right now who was mediocre. Not a single person who could make it here could be underestimated. Although many of them were nameless, they were merely hidden. Perhaps there were some among them who were not the slightest bit weaker than Tiznik. However, they were not as dazzling and flamboyant as Tiznik. Chapter 9:29. The 3 groups did not come into conflict. They all stood at the entrance to the 9th floor and studied one another before continuing on their way. All of them were filled with caution. Not only did they have to be wary of the dangers from the palace, but they also had to be wary of anyone in the surroundings. No one dared to be careless. The dozen or so people climbed the long stairs and finally reached the 9th floor. However, when they arrived, everyone was dumbfounded. What appeared in front of them was not the majestic hall they had imagined, but 9 pitch-black passageways. They did not know where they would go. Everyone could not help but stop. They all stared at the pitch-black tunnels with furrowed brows. The light in their eyes flickered. This situation had completely exceeded what they had expected. Do we have to go through these tunnels to reach the 9th floor? An old man in the 3rd group guessed. Jianshun scanned through the 9 tunnels sternly. Afterwards, he expanded the senses of his soul as hard as he could in an attempt to investigate the situation inside. However, Jianshun's soul was suppressed even more here. He was only able to expand his senses to 100 meters away. He could not see as far as the naked eye. We've already come this far. There's no turning back. Whether you want to obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands or leave this place, you have to make it to the 9th floor. Newbies, let's pick a random path, Jianshun said sternly. Newbies nodded. That's the only thing we can do now. Afterwards, Jianshun chose a random tunnel and left with newbies. MOG and the other 2 followed them. When Jianshun's group vanished into the tunnels, Tesniak and the other group each chose a tunnel and left as well. The 2 groups remained together. The tunnels were like gourds. The entrance was small, but it was a completely different world inside. When Jianshun's group passed through the long tunnel, they actually arrived in a huge, spacious space that was around 1,000 meters in diameter. Around this space, there were 9 huge stone pillars standing there. The stone pillars were completely blood red and emitted a demonic red light, surrounding the entire space. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled rumbling sound came from behind them. They saw that Jianshun's path of retreat was blocked by a huge stone door. The material of this stone door was exactly the same as the door on the 2nd floor of the palace that was used as a treasure room. Its defensive power was terrifying. The hearts of Jianshun and the others sank. They already had a bad premonition. Suddenly, a powerful energy fluctuation appeared. The 9 stone pillars surrounding the open space emitted a dazzling red light. Then, the light intertwined in mid-air, forming a blood-red dome of light that enveloped the entire space. Aside from the blood-red dome, there were no other colors in the space. Jianshun and the others felt as though they were in another space. This is a very powerful formation, and it's a killing formation, Newbie said with a deep voice. His face was extremely stern, and his hands quickly turned golden. He was ready for battle. Jianshun's face also became stern. He could sense how terrifying the killing formation was with the king weapon in his hand. Just from its might alone, he could tell that the killing formation was far more powerful than any formation on the 8th floor of the palace. Suddenly, the sound of waves rang out in everyone's eyes. In the sky, a sea of blood that seemed to have been formed completely from blood rained down, turning the space Jianshun was into a sea of blood in an instant. The sea of blood constantly bubbled and churned, as if it had become a surging ocean. Furthermore, Jinshin and the others could vaguely see countless vengeful spirits howling at the top of their lungs from the splashing waves from time to time. They turned into sinister and terrifying ghost faces that opened their bloody mouths wide to bite at everyone. It was a hair-raising sight. A thin layer of bloody mist slowly drifted towards everyone, enveloping them very quickly. The bloody mist had the effect of harming the soul. As soon as it approached them, it immediately invaded their minds, making it impossible to defend against. Jinshin and the others immediately felt a piercing pain in their heads. They immediately became dizzy, becoming somewhat delirious. "This is baleful Yin-Chi," Jinshin cried out. Disbelief filled his face. The baleful Yin-Chi was exactly the same as the baleful Yin-Chi he had sensed from the four protectors of the Bloodsword sect. Jinshin had gained some understanding of baleful Yin-Chi on the Tianyuan continent. It was said that it was a special energy formed from slaughter. Aside from the three great assassin organizations, the Bloodsword sect, no one could grasp this power. Baleful Yin-Chi possessed the wondrous effect of affecting the mind. There was no way to defend against it at all. The only option was to endure it. It was said that if the baleful Yin-Chi was powerful enough, it could even directly disperse the soul of the target, wiping them out. It was extremely powerful. Only the assassins of the Bloodsword sect can cultivate baleful Yin-Chi. How can there be such power here? Jinshin constantly questioned himself. He was extremely unsettled. After all, this was the divine hall of the Eight Wastelands, the former residence of the Eight Wastelands Emperors. Yet, the formation here actually possessed baleful Yin-Chi. Did the former emperors of the Eight Wastelands possess this power as well? Fortunately, the baleful Yin-Chi was not powerful. It was not enough to wipe out Jinshin and the others. At most, it would affect them slightly and hinder them from using their strength. Suddenly, the sea of blood began to churn even more violently before slowly condensing into a 100-meter-tall blood-red giant. It radiated with a great presence. The blood-red giant's appearance was unclear, but it gave off an indomitable feeling as it stood there. It radiated with a great pressure, as if it was a god of the world. At this moment, the blood-red giant moved. It directly extended a finger towards Jinshin and the others. With that finger, its arm began to elongate and its finger expanded. It actually extended to a distance of several hundred meters, shooting towards Jinshin and the others with a great pressure. Jinshin's saint weapon shone with a black light as a destructive energy filled the space. Newbies' palms shone with golden light as powerful energy constantly pulsed from them. MOG and the others all took out their weapons and unleashed their full strength. Afterward, they all worked together and unleashed their strongest attacks at the blood-red giant's finger. Boom! With a great rumble, their attacks collided with the blood-red giant's finger. Immediately, a violent shockwave of energy wreaked havoc in the sea of blood. The blood-red giant's finger paused, and its forward momentum came to a halt. On the other hand, Jinshin and the others were all blown away without exception. They all paled. Newbies and the others all vomited blood. They were already heavily injured. Jinshin also had blood flowing from his mouth. He was also heavily injured. After the five of them flew back tens of meters, they hit the edge of the formation and fell to the ground. Immediately, a few mouthfuls of blood spurted out from their mouths. Jinshin stood up with a flip and stared at the blood-red giant in shock. His face was extremely grim. The blood-red giant's strength had far exceeded their expectations. Jinshin had already determined that the blood-red giant's strength was at least on par with the Holy Emperor's 5th heavenly layer or even 6th heavenly layer. It was definitely not something they could deal with. Damn it, this formation is too powerful. It actually created such a powerful thing. How can we be a match for it? Newbies cursed as he got up from the ground. He immediately took out a bunch of Tier 6 Radiant Shrine pills from his spatial ring and stuffed them into his mouth. MOG and the other two also took out jade bottles from their spatial rings. At the same time, they poured out jade-green medicinal pills and consumed them with pained expressions. The medicinal pills they consumed were clearly much more effective than the radiant shrine pills. Their complexions immediately changed at an unbelievable speed. Their recovery speed was even faster than Nubi's. A tremendous pressure appeared from behind, and the blood-red giant moved once again. The same finger shot toward Jianshun and the others with a terrifying pressure. The three of them were filled with despair. The blood-red giant was just too powerful. They were still heavily injured, so they could not block the second finger. Jianshun stared at the approaching finger. Suddenly, a golden light shot out from between his eyebrows, and the saint artifact appeared in his hand. He immediately opened the door, and a soaring sword chi immediately surged out. The emperor armament that had been trapped by the artifact spirit flew out with the soaring sword chi. As soon as it left the artifact's space, it collided with the huge finger. With a boom, the blood-red finger shattered from the attack of the emperor armament. It turned into a sea of blood that fell to the ground, but it all flowed toward the blood-red giant in the next moment, fusing with its body. The blood-red giant's arm regrew. At that moment, its attention was focused on the emperor armament. Its huge blood-red hand directly reached toward the emperor armament. The emperor armament was infuriated. It radiated with a powerful sword chi and chopped off the giant's hand in a single stroke. However, the blood-red giant was an unkillable existence. The severed arm immediately turned into a sea of blood and fused with its body, allowing it to regenerate. I hope the emperor armament can destroy the blood-red giant. Nubis was overjoyed. He seemed to have seen the flames of hope right now. Even the three of them were the same. However, what the emperor armament did next exceeded their expectations. It no longer tangled with the blood-red giant. Instead, it flew to the edge of the formation and slashed at the space there, creating a huge hole in the formation. Afterward, it flew out and fled. Jianshun and the others were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They all charged toward the hole as quickly as they could. At that moment, they pushed their speed to the limit. With the assistance of a secret technique, Nubis was at the very front. He was the first to leave the formation, followed by the three of them. Jianshun was the last because he was further away from the hole. Chapter 9:30. Jianshun and the others were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They all charged toward the gap as quickly as they could. At that moment, they all pushed their speed to the limit. With the assistance of a secret technique, Nubis charged at the very front. He was the first to leave the formation space, followed by Mog, Heiyu, and Heiyu. Jianshun was the last because he was further away from the gap. The blood-red giant in the formation space was at least at the fifth heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. Its strength was not something they could contend against. If they continued to stay there, only death would await them. Now that the gap had been created by the Emperor armament, it obviously became their target of escape. All of them knew that this was probably their only chance at survival. As a result, they all pushed their speed to the limit at that moment. Don't even think about escaping, Emperor armament. If I can collect you once, I can collect you again. Jianshun turned into a blur as he shot toward the gap with lightning speed. Jianshun had used the Emperor armament because he had no other choice. Probably only the Emperor armament could contend against the blood-red giant on him right now. However, he had never expected the outcome. The blood-red giant was indeed not the Emperor armament's opponent, but the Emperor Shi's Emperor armament did not destroy the blood-red giant as he had hoped. Instead, the Emperor armament had escaped by itself. Jianshun's head was filled with the Emperor armament. Now that the Emperor armament had escaped, he became extremely worried. He knew that the Emperor armament probably possessed a sliver of its previous owner's soul, so it possessed some intelligence. It would definitely be on guard after suffering from the same artifact once, so it would not be so easy to collect it in the next time. Very soon, the three of them arrived at the edge of the gap. Jianshun arrived less than 10 meters behind them as well. However, just when the three of them were about to leave the formation space, a cold light flashed through their eyes. They suddenly turned around and sent a palm strike at Jianshun. Although the three of them had yet to recover from their injuries, The might of the three palm strikes was not to be underestimated. Three massive waves of energy shot towards Jianshan, who was less than 10 meters behind them. Jianshan was currently worried about the Emperor armament. He had never thought that the three of them would attack him at a time like this. By the time he returned to his senses, the three huge waves of energy had already arrived before him. Jianshan's face abruptly changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this critical moment, the Emperor's Saint weapon in his hand slashed out like lightning, colliding with the powerful energy coming from the three of them. With a loud rumble, the violent energy shock waves hit Jianshan's body wave after wave, immediately stopping his forward momentum. Soon after, his body was pushed back uncontrollably, only stopping after being pushed back several hundred meters. At this moment, the crack from the Emperor armament rapidly closed up. It was possible to see the three of them through the crack. They were currently staring at Jianshan with a sneer on their faces. Jianshan's face was extremely sunken. A powerful killing intent radiated from his heart uncontrollably, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. The crack closed up extremely quickly, so Jianshan no longer had the ability to escape. Jianshan will definitely kill you, Jianshan coldly said. His icy cold words that seemed to come from the mouth of the Grim Reaper were clearly heard by the three of them. With that, the crack in the formation space completely closed up, trapping Jianshan once again. The empty space outside the formation had been enveloped by a huge, blood-red barrier, only leaving behind an extremely narrow tunnel. Heiyu and Newbies were currently in the narrow tunnel. Newbie saw everything that had just happened, and his face sank in a single moment. He radiated with a tremendous killing intent that surged into the sky. How dare the three of you touch Jianshan? The great Newbies, will tear you to pieces. Newbies' eyes were red as he immediately reached toward the three of them with his golden hands. At that moment, the three of them seemed to have become completely different people. Although they had witnessed Newbies' strength, they completely ignored Newbies' attack. Their eyes were filled with disdain. A vast amount of energy gushed out from their bodies, quickly condensing into a set of armor on their bodies, protecting their entire bodies. Newbies' claws landed on the three of them, but they were actually unable to get through the armor. They were knocked back a few steps. This is the power of the Holy Emperor. Didn't you use up the power of the Holy Emperor within you long ago? You actually still have it. Newbies was surprised and immediately became rather stern. The three of them immediately sneered when they heard that. One of them said, "Used up? Hee, that's just to trick you. Newbies, the power in us may not have been left behind by experts like Hall Elders, but it's still at the 16th star. Do you think you can get through it with your strength?" Newbies coldly said, "Do you think you can obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands just like that? Don't forget that aside from Jianshan, there's also Tiznaiki. Without Jianshan, you won't be able to defeat Tiznaiki with just the power of the Holy Emperor. Who said we wanted to fight over the legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands?" Moji said. He looked at Newbies scornfully. "Our ultimate goal is not to fight over the legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, but to kill the three of you. If it weren't for the fact that there were just too many people ahead and we were worried that someone would spread the news and drag our clans into it, the three of us would have taken action long ago. However, this is perfect. We can use the power of the formation to kill off Jianshan, leaving behind a portion of our strength. The remaining strength of the three of us is enough to eliminate you." "What? You've come here to kill us?" Newbies was surprised. This outcome had completely exceeded their expectations. "That's right. You've offended the Serpent God Hall. Do you really think you can relax after hiding in His Majesty Poseidon?" Moji said, "I see. So you're from the Serpent God Hall." Newbies came to a realization. "We're not from the Serpent God Hall. We've only been asked to do so by them. Newbies, since you know everything now, it's time for us to send you on your way." Ice-cold, killing intent appeared in the eyes of the three of them. Afterward, the tremendous power of the Holy Emperor surged out of their bodies, forming 3 sea beasts that roared out furiously. They charged at Newbies aggressively. This was not their own power. Instead, it was the power of the Holy Emperor that had been left in them by a 16th-star expert, who was at least at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. It was extremely powerful. Newbies was stern. He turned around and fled. Although he was confident, he did not believe he could block such a powerful attack. A casual attack from a 16-star expert could heavily injure him. If he had to take on the combined attacks of 3 16-star experts, he would only be half dead even if he managed to survive. Most importantly, he had no idea what level of cultivation the person who had left behind the power of the Holy Emperor was. Was it the Holy Emperor at the 5th heavenly layer, or the Holy Emperor at the 8th heavenly layer? Or was it the Holy Emperor at the 9th heavenly layer? However, Newbies was unable to escape from the pursuit of the Holy Emperor's power. He was caught very quickly. Newbies threw caution to the wind when he realized that he could not escape. He roared at the sky, and golden and silver light emerged from his body, immediately condensing into fine scales that covered every inch of his body. Golden and silver flames burned on the scales. The flames burned brighter and brighter, and under the flames, his scales actually began to swell at an unbelievable rate. Newbies' face was filled with pain. He gritted his teeth and called out, "Legacy's secret technique, gold-silver phosphorus explosion." The gold-silver phosphorus explosion was a self-harming method of attack. It used a secret technique to trigger the explosion of all the scales to injure the people around it. Not only was it extremely powerful, but it was also poisonous. However, the price of using this secret technique was too high. Not only would one's vitality be greatly damaged, but one would also lose all the scales on one's body. One would have to endure tens or even hundreds of years of pain to slowly recover their vitality. Then they would have to shed their skin and grow new scales. "Newbies, I'm here. Stop." At this moment, Jinshin's voice entered Newbies' ears. Newbies' eyes lit up. He subconsciously stopped using the legacy secret technique. Then a golden light shone in front of him. He saw a golden pagoda fly through the sky and block his path. This golden pagoda was 10 meters tall and 2 meters in diameter. It landed heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Newbies blocked the 3 attacks of the Holy Emperor's power. Boom! The 3 attacks of the Holy Emperor's power collided with the golden pagoda. However, the golden pagoda did not move at all. Newbies, who stood behind the pagoda, was not injured at all. Soon after, a loud tiger's roar rang out. A white figure flashed, and a majestic white tiger appeared behind the 3 of them. The white tiger was 3 meters long and had a pair of wings on its back. As it stood there, a pressure immediately radiated from its body, as if it was a king that had descended upon the world. Its presence was even denser than the Holy Emperor's. A figure sat on the white tiger's back. It was Jinshin. When the 3 of them saw Jinshin behind them, their eyes immediately widened. Disbelief filled their faces. "Jinshin, you've actually escaped. How is this possible? You've actually escaped from the formation. Have you already broken through the formation? Impossible. The crack from the Emperor armament has already healed. How did you escape?" Chapter 9:31. When MOG and the other 2 saw Jinshin behind them, their eyes widened in disbelief. "Jinshin, you actually escaped? How is this possible? You actually came out of the formation. Could it be that you've already broken the formation?" "Impossible. The crack from the Emperor armament has already healed. So how did you get out?" MOG and the other 2 exclaimed in shock. Their faces turned ugly. Jinshin held the king's sacred weapon in his right hand as he rode on the back of the majestic white tiger. He coldly stared at MOG and the other 2. An intense killing intent was emitted from his body. "Although I knew that this would happen sooner or later, I never thought that you would actually be assassins sent by the Serpent God Hall," Jinshin said coldly. He had heard every single word that MOG and the other 2 had said. Back in the Poseidon Hall, MOG and the other 2 had actively sought out Jinshin. They wanted to enter the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall with Jinshin. This was actually a plan that the 3 of them had come up with long ago. Their goal was to approach Jinshin and find a good opportunity to eliminate Jinshin. MOG and MOG so that they could complete the mission the Serpent God Hall had given them. In order for the three of them to eliminate Jinshin's group successfully, the experts of the Serpent God Hall went to great lengths to leave behind abundant Holy Emperor's power in their bodies. The three of them had hidden the 16th star Holy Emperor's power extremely well, only revealing it now. The fourth person who had joined Jinshin's group was a complete coincidence, but he had already died. Although the three of them were extremely surprised that Jinshin could break out of the formation, they were still 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers after all, so they calmed down very quickly. Killing intent immediately filled their faces. One of them sneered, "Jinshin, I never thought that you'd be so lucky. You're actually still alive after falling into such a powerful formation. Since the formation hasn't killed you, let the three of us eliminate you. You'll definitely die today." Vast amounts of Holy Emperor's power surged out from the three of them, condensing into sea beasts in front of them in a single moment. They furiously roared as they charged toward Jinshin. The amount of Holy Emperor's power they used this time was clearly much greater than before. As the three sea beasts shot through the air, an extremely tremendous pressure immediately pressed down on Jinshin, suffocating Jinshin. Jinshin was stern. He had come into contact with 5th Heavenly Layer Holy Emperor experts many times in the past, so he was extremely familiar with the power they used. He had already determined that the owner of the power was definitely at the 5th Heavenly Layer of the Holy Emperor from the three of them. Although they were not at the level of Hall Elders, they were close. Jinshin did not dare to receive such a powerful attack head-on. He gently patted the white tiger's back with his left hand, and the white tiger seemed to have received some sort of order. It actually leapt into the blood-red barrier beside it and entered the formation again. The power of the Holy Emperor passed through where Jinshin had been standing with a tremendous pressure, heavily slamming into the wall in front of him. Boom! With a great boom, the entire hall gently shook. The attack from the three of them, using the power of the Holy Emperor, was enough to shake the entire hall. It was no weaker than an uncontrolled Emperor armament. A white figure appeared behind the three of them in a flash. The white tiger ran out of the formation with Jinshin, arriving behind the three of them silently. Without any hesitation, Jinshin immediately leapt off the white tiger's back and shot toward the three of them with lightning-like speed. He stabbed out 3 times with the saint weapon in his hand, which glowed with black, chaotic force. Ding, ding, ding. Before the three of them could react, the saint weapon had already struck the back of their heads. However, they were protected by the armor condensed from the Holy Emperor's power, including their heads. Jinshin's attack failed to injure them at all. The force from the saint weapon caused the three of them to stumble a few steps forward. Fine cracks had already appeared on the armor condensed from the Holy Emperor's power behind their heads. Jinshin was unable to destroy the armor condensed from the power of the Holy Emperor in a single strike, but he could still damage it slightly. Jinshin did not stop at all. With a sudden jerk of his arm, the saint weapon continued to stab out as a blur, completely enveloping the three of them. With a series of clangs, the three of them were hit over a dozen times in a short moment by Jinshin's attacks, causing web-like cracks to appear on their armor. They rapidly spread across their bodies. The three of them revealed drastically different expressions. The Holy Emperor's power within them immediately broke free, borrowing the power of the Holy Emperor to deal with Jinshin again. Jinshin knew how terrifying the Holy Emperor's power was, so he did not try to fight back. He extended his hand and beckoned. The 10-meter-tall Saint artifact immediately flew over from behind him, blocking the attacks from the three of them. It took on the Holy Emperor's power for him. The powerful attacks from the three of them that could shake the palace struck the sacred artifact. However, the sacred artifact didn't even shake. It had taken on such a powerful attack without any effort. "I'd like to see just how much more of this power you have," Jinshin coldly said. Jinshin said coldly before using the Saint artifact as a cover. He continued to launch a barrage of attacks at the three of them. The power of the Holy Emperor within the three of them ran out very quickly after such a huge expenditure. Without the Holy Emperor's power to rely on, They lost the ability to contend against Jianshan. Very soon, they were slain by Jianshan's sword, wiping out their souls. With their deaths, their blood was rapidly sucked away by the Divine Hall. They were reduced to dried-up corpses very soon. Jianshan walked up and took the space rings from the three of them. The Saint artifact shrank back to the size of a palm and flew into his hand. He then walked up to the white tiger and gently stroked its snow-white fur. He said, "Little White, it's too dangerous here. It's best if you go back to the artifact space and work hard to increase your strength." The white tiger had been consuming heavenly resources to cultivate during this time, so its strength had increased extremely quickly. It had already reached the level of a Class 6 magical beast. Its strength was equivalent to a 5th cycle heaven Saint Master. Its speed was astounding. After all, it had only been a few years since the white tiger had been born. The white tiger did not resist. It let out a deep roar and entered the artifact space. Jianshan arrived before Newbies. He looked at Newbies' rather pale face and asked in concern, "Are you fine?" Newbies stared at the three corpses with a sunken face. He gritted his teeth and said, "I never thought that the three of them would actually be assassins sent by the Serpent God Hall. Jianshan, it's fortunate that you appeared in time, or I, the great Newbies, would have been skinned alive." Jianshan chuckled with that. He glanced around, and in the end, his gaze landed on a nearby door. A meter-wide hole had already appeared on the door. The Emperor armament should have left from there. The door should lead to where the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands is. "Let's go," Jianshan said before making his way toward the door with Newbies. Jianshan did not let Xie Wang out. With Xie Wang's current strength, he would only be of some use when they first entered the Divine Hall. However, they had already reached the end, and the dangers they would face later would be far greater than before. If Xie Wang was let out, not only would he not be of any help, he would even become a burden to them. He might even lose his life for nothing. Jianshan and Newbies made their way toward the door that had been opened by the Emperor armament. In the end, they entered a long corridor. The corridor was gloomy. It was long and winding. Jianshan and Newbies cautiously made their way through the silent corridor. After advancing for a few kilometers, the area before them suddenly opened up. In front of him was a splendidly decorated hall. The hall was very spacious, at least 100 meters wide and a few hundred meters long. The things inside were in a mess. All kinds of decorative fragments were scattered everywhere. There were traces left behind by the passage of time, as if a great battle had taken place here a long time ago. Jianshan glanced around, and his gaze froze very soon. He saw 5 figures standing 100 meters in front of him. How did they get here so quickly? Newbies discovered the figures as well, and his face was filled with surprise. The 5 figures were from the other 2 groups. One of them was Tesniak. They had actually made it here before Jianshan. When Jianshan discovered them, the 5 of them discovered Jianshan as well. They all looked over and stared at Jianshan and Newbies closely. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you're a little slow," Tesniak emotionlessly said to Jianshan. Jianshan and Newbies made their way over the countless pieces of ornaments. Jianshan said, "I originally thought that I would be the first to arrive, but looks like I'm the last one." Jianshan and Newbies stopped 20 meters away from them. They constantly glanced at the other 4 people. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I originally thought that only the 2 of us would be able to make it here, but I never thought that I would be wrong. The 2 of us aren't the only ones who can make it here. There are a few other friends who have been hiding their strength," Tesniak coldly said as he stared at the other 4 people. Chapter 9:32. Among the 4, the middle-aged man was in the same group as Tesniak. He had been hiding very deeply and kept a very low profile. That was why he had stayed by Tesniak's side for so long without being discovered by Tesniak. Tesniak's sharp gaze swept over them, and then he looked towards the depths of the hall, a burning look in his eyes. In the depths of the great hall, there was a huge stone statue standing there. The stone statue had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The sculpture was extremely lifelike, as if it was a real person. It was filled with charm. He seemed to have completely fused with the world as he stood there. He had become one with the world, where there was no distinction between the two. Gazing at the stone statue, everyone standing in the hall felt as if there was a vast pressure pressing down on their souls, making them want to prostrate themselves in worship of the stone statue. Is this the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands? Jinshin struggled to remain calm as he stared at the huge statue. However, Jinshin soon thought of what Elder Hong had told him. He looked around and thought. Elder Hong said that the most precious thing in the Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands is this Divine Hall other than the legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. As long as I can find the core of the Divine Hall, I'll be able to control it. But where is it? Jinshin, why isn't the Emperor armament here? Where did it go? Suddenly, Nubi's voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Jinshin was slightly surprised when he heard that. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he looked around carefully. He actually failed to find any traces of the Emperor armament. Why is it like this? We clearly made our way here through the door the Emperor armament opened. So why is there no trace of the Emperor armament here? Jinshin thought inside as his face became unsettled. At this moment, Tisnike's voice rang out. If I've guessed correctly, the legacy of the Eight Wastelands must be in that statue because it's the only thing that remains intact here. However, there are 7 of us here right now, and only one of us can obtain the legacy of the Eight Wastelands. Do you have any good plans to deal with this? The light in everyone's eyes immediately flickered when they heard that. They all cautiously stared at the surroundings to avoid any sudden attacks. All of them were tempted by the legacy of the Eight Wastelands. They had spent so much effort to make it here. So how could they give up so easily? The hall immediately fell into a deathly silence. The 7 of them stood there silently as the atmosphere became extremely oppressive. A faint killing intent gradually permeated the hall. Let me see if the legacy of the Eight Wastelands is in the statue or not. The oppressive atmosphere in the hall was finally broken. The old woman extended a finger, and immediately a strand of the Holy Emperor's force shot out, viciously colliding with the statue. Tisnike and the others did not stop her. Instead, they stared at the statue. They weren't sure if this stone statue was the 8 Baron Great Emperor or not. They also didn't know if the stone statue contained the 8 Baron Great Emperor's inheritance. They all wanted to use the old woman to test the stone statue's authenticity. Boom! The statue was even more fragile than they had imagined. The old woman's Holy Emperor's force easily destroyed the statue, causing it to scatter in all directions. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with disappointment. It had been destroyed so easily. They did not dare to believe that the 8 Baron Great Emperor's inheritance had been left behind in the stone statue. However, at this moment, a ball of azure light appeared from the shattered statue. A ball of azure light silently hovered in the air above the head of the statue, emitting a hazy azure light. Everyone in the hall, including Jinshin, immediately stared at the ball of azure light. Tisnike could not help but cry out, "Is this the legacy of the Eight Wastelands?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard Tisnike's words. Their eyes immediately burned with desire. Even Jinshin and newbies were no exception. This was the legacy of a holy emperor. It contained all of the holy emperor's knowledge and comprehension of the mysteries of the world. If they obtained it, reaching the level of a holy emperor would only be a matter of time. Something's not right. Suddenly, Jinshin's eyes narrowed. He stared closely at the ball of azure light as surprise and uncertainty filled his eyes. His soul was extremely powerful, far surpassing Tisnike and the others. At this moment, he could actually vaguely sense the pulses of his soul within the azure light. Although it was very weak, it was extremely active. That soul is awake. The azure light is a seal to prevent the pulses of the soul from spreading out and being sensed by others. Jinshin suddenly thought of something like that, which made his face pale slightly. When he thought of the various strange things he had encountered after entering the divine hall of the Eight Wastelands, he suddenly reached an unbelievable conclusion. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands was still alive. A few whistles suddenly rang out. Tiznike and the four others had already charged towards the ball of azure light. They moved as fast as lightning. Newbies did not hesitate at all. However, just when he wanted to join in, Jianshan suddenly grabbed his shoulder and said, "Don't go. This matter isn't as simple as it seems." After all these years together, Newbies had basically become a blind newcomer to Jianshan. When he heard Jianshan's words, he immediately suppressed his impulses and did not join in. Tiznike and the four others arrived before the ball of azure light with lightning-like speed. They actually extended their hands towards it at the same time. At this moment, something happened. The azure light suddenly vanished, replaced by a dazzling, blood-red light. Before Tiznike and the others could react, it shot towards the five of them with unbelievable speed, disappearing into their heads in a single moment. Ha! The Emperor has finally waited for this day. The day when the Emperor reappears is not far away. Poseidon Hall, Serpent God Hall, Heaven Spirit Hall. Once the Emperor possesses you, the Emperor will destroy all of you before long. Wild laughter rang out in the air. It was extremely arrogant. The sudden change caused Jianshan and Newbies to become stern. In particular, the wild laughter that had appeared out of nowhere made Jianshan and Newbies' hearts sink to rock bottom. Is this the voice of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands? The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands is still alive? Newbies' voice trembled slightly. At that moment, he and Jianshan both understood that the Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands was actually a scheme for the Emperor to be reborn. Jianshan's face was extremely sunken. He said, "I finally understand why the blood of those people and vicious beasts would suddenly be absorbed by the Divine Hall. So it was all part of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands scheme. Right now, the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands only has his soul left. After slumbering for so many years, his soul must have become extremely weak. He needs to absorb the essence of the blood of those experts and vicious beasts to recover." Newbies' face became extremely ugly. He said in a hurry, "Jianshan, we can't stay here any longer. Let's leave quickly." Jianshan shook his head powerlessly. So the Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands is a trap. The so-called legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands is all fake. No wonder we couldn't find the way out earlier. We can only enter the Divine Hall, not leave. There's no way out at all. We can't leave now. The five people who had been shot by the red light all cried out miserably. They all clutched their heads in pain as they rolled on the ground. There's actually a king as well. Then the Emperor will choose you. The arrogant voice rang out in the empty hall once more. Afterwards, several explosions rang out. Aside from Tiznike, the heads of the other four people all exploded. Their souls were wiped out. Afterwards, the red light that had burrowed into their heads all squeezed into Tiznike's head. These red lights were the primordial spirit of a person. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. You're the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. You're actually still alive. Tiznike roared out in pain. His face had already paled. He could sense that his soul was gradually being devoured by an even more powerful soul. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, you can forget about devouring my soul. Tiznike's eyes flashed with rage. A fierce light shone in Tiznike's eyes. Soon after, an extremely terrifying energy ripple radiated from his body, filling the entire hall with a world-destroying might. The hall began to shake violently. At that moment, it seemed like the entire Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands was shaking gently. The powerful energy radiating from Tiznike was enough to destroy the entire Divine Hall. God damn it, this is Emperor's power. You actually have Emperor's power within you. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands cried out in fear. He had once been an emperor, but he was only a weak soul right now. It was more than enough to deal with saint rulers like Tiznike, but he could not resist Emperor's power at all. Just a strand of Emperor's power was enough to wipe him out. Immediately, the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands no longer dared to remain in Tiznike's body. His soul immediately flew out, flying toward Jianshan and Newbies as a blood-red streak of light. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands' soul flew extremely quickly. It arrived before Jianchen in the blink of an eye and directly burrowed into Jianchen's head before Jianchen could even react. Jianchen's face changed, and he paled in a single moment. His facial muscles constantly twisted, clearly in great pain. However, Jianchen's soul was far more powerful than Tisnik's. Although the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands' soul brought him great pain, it was still within a range that he could endure. Jianchen, are you all right? Newbie's cries rang out, but Jianchen could no longer hear them. His consciousness had entered his sea of consciousness with the Emperor of the Eight Wasteland soul. At this moment, Jianchen's figure appeared out of nowhere in his sea of consciousness. Before him was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. The young man wore blood-red robes, and his face was filled with evilness. Even his eyes and hair were blood-red, as if they had been dyed with blood. Chapter 9:33. The young man in blood could not help but laugh wildly in Jianchen's sea of consciousness when he heard what Jianchen had said. His blood-red eyes were cold, filled with brutality and killing intent. The Emperor is not the weak Eight Wastelands. The souls of the Eight Wastelands have been devoured by the Emperor long ago. Other than the Eight Wastelands, the soul of another person called Gulu has also been devoured by the Emperor. Today, you will be the third person to be devoured by the Emperor. Once the Emperor devours you, he will possess your body. How great an honor would that be for you? Kid, don't resist. All resistance is futile before the Emperor. Just fuse with the Emperor at ease, sneered the young man in blood. I really never thought that the Blood Demon Emperor would still be alive after being dead for several tens of thousands of years, and he's even devoured the souls of 2 other emperors. Jianchen's face sank. Now he completely understood the identity of the young man in blood. He was the Blood Demon Emperor who had fought against the Hall Masters of the Poseidon Hall several tens of thousands of years ago, heavily injuring the Hall Masters of the Poseidon Hall and the Hall Master of Dragon God Temple, as well as killing the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Blood Demon Emperor, you were indeed extremely powerful when you were alive, but you're only left with your soul now. In your current state, you probably can't even deal with a few 16-star experts, which is why you can only possess our bodies. However, do you really think you can successfully possess me and devour my soul? Jianchen coldly replied. At the same time, his sea of consciousness suddenly shook. A soul that far surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler radiated. This was the power of Jianchen's soul. Your soul is indeed very powerful, but it's not enough to threaten the Emperor. Come, don't resist. Fuse with me, the great Blood Demon Emperor. Once we fuse, you'll be the Blood Demon Emperor. Very soon, your name will spread across the entire sea realm, and you'll become the greatest expert of the sea race. You'll be respected and feared by countless people. Just think about it, just how great of an honor this is. As long as you fuse with me, you'll be able to enjoy this supreme honor. As the Blood Demon Emperor spoke, a strand of faint baleful force filled Jianchen's sea of consciousness in an attempt to affect Jianchen's mind and thoughts so that he could achieve his goal. The Blood Demon Emperor had already noticed that Jianchen was extraordinary. Not only had Jianchen's soul far surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, but he could also sense 2 extremely powerful forces in his sea of consciousness. He felt threatened from the 2 forces, which was why he had wasted so much time talking to Jianchen. Jianchen's sea of consciousness began to gently tremble. Jianchen was unable to resist the baleful force from the Blood Demon Emperor. He could only endure it. The baleful force from the Blood Demon Emperor had already affected Jianchen's soul slightly. Blood Demon Emperor, do you think I'm as easy to trick as a 3-year-old? You're dreaming if you want to devour my soul and take over my body. I will never let you do as you wish, Jianchen countered mercilessly. The Blood Demon Emperor was furious. Killing intent filled his eyes. He was no longer in the mood to waste his breath on Jianchen. He growled, I'll give you one last chance. Do you want the Emperor to devour you? Or do you want to fuse with the Emperor? What's the difference between devouring and fusing? I won't be able to escape death in the end, but do you really think you have the ability to devour my soul? A disdainful sneer appeared on Jianchen's face. He had already fused with the sword spirits, So devouring his soul would be equivalent to devouring the sword spirits. Although the sword spirits were still very weak, they were once the spirits of a sword after all. Even the destruction of the azulate swords did not kill them. So how could a mere blood demon emperor devour them? Jian Shun could also tell that the blood demon emperor's soul was still very weak. It was not as powerful as he had imagined it to be. It could probably only deal with ninth heavenly layer saint rulers like Tisniak with ease. Since you won't cooperate, the emperor will take over your body even if he has to take the risk of being heavily injured. I'd like to see how you resist my baleful force. The blood demon emperor suddenly vanished. He turned into a blood-red mist that constantly expanded in Jinshin's sea of consciousness. Jinshin's face immediately became filled with pain. His sea of consciousness seemed to experience an earthquake as it began to violently tremble. The blood demon emperor's baleful force had evolved from baleful force. Not only did it possess the same characteristics as baleful force, but it was also far more powerful. The baleful force slowly devoured Jinshin's soul. At this moment, a golden light suddenly appeared. It shone brightly and filled Jinshin's entire sea of consciousness. A golden pagoda rapidly expanded in the depths of Jinshin's sea of consciousness. It was only the size of a palm in the beginning, but in the blink of an eye, it had expanded to tens of thousands of meters tall. The golden pagoda was like a Poseidon. Its appearance immediately stabilized Jinshin's shaking sea of consciousness. The blood demon emperor's baleful force was no longer able to harm Jinshin. What is this? It can actually block my baleful force. The blood demon emperor's cry rang out in Jinshin's sea of consciousness. His voice was filled with disbelief. The golden light enveloped Jinshin's entire sea of consciousness, absorbing the damage from the baleful force in place of Jinshin. Afterwards, the golden light rapidly retracted and actually forced the blood demon emperor's baleful force back into the sea of consciousness. In the end, it condensed back into the appearance of the young men in blood. They were in Jinshin's sea of consciousness, and the Saint Artifact had already recognized Jinshin as its master. As a result, the Saint Artifact was much more powerful there than it was outside. The Blood Demon Emperor was unable to shake the Saint Artifact at all as a soul. What is this? It can actually block my baleful force. And how can it appear in your soul? The Blood Demon Emperor cried out. Even though he had once been a knowledgeable emperor, he had never heard of something as strange as this. With a thought, a sword immediately appeared before Jinshin before shooting toward the Blood Demon Emperor's soul with lightning-like speed. The sword was condensed from the power of Jinshin's soul. He was unable to use chaotic force in his sea of consciousness, and even the advantage of the chaotic body was completely lost. He could only use his soul to fight against the Blood Demon Emperor. Your soul is not weak, but it's not enough to harm the Emperor, the Blood Demon Emperor sneered. The Demon Blood Emperor sneered. At this moment, he finally realized that the Saint Artifact could only protect Jinshin from harm and not attack. This made him feel much more relieved. The sword condensed from the power of Jinshin's soul directly pierced through the Blood Demon Emperor's body. It failed to harm the Blood Demon Emperor at all. The Emperor said that you can't harm me at all. The Emperor's soul may not be as powerful as it was in his peak condition, but it's not something a mere 14-star warrior like you can harm, the Blood Demon Emperor sneered. I don't think that's the case, said Jinshin before rapidly fading away. He vanished from the sea of consciousness very soon. Blood Demon Emperor, I wonder if I can harm you if I use my full strength. Jinshin's voice rang out from all directions. Afterwards, the entire sea of consciousness began to churn violently. An even more terrifying soul condensed into a sword, shooting toward the Blood Demon Emperor as a bolt of lightning. The Blood Demon Emperor bellowed out. Immediately, a strand of slaughter chi separated from his soul to receive the incoming sword from Jinshin. However, before the strand of slaughter chi could leave his body, it was forced back by the power of the Saint Artifact. He had been trapped by the Saint Artifact, and had basically lost the ability to fight back. All he could do was watch as Jinshin's sword shot toward him. The attack that Jinshin had unleashed with the power of his soul directly pierced through the Blood Demon Emperor's body. After taking on the attack, the Blood Demon Emperor was no longer able to remain unscathed. His body immediately dimmed slightly. "You can't kill the Emperor." The Blood Demon Emperor bellowed at the sky. His body rapidly shrank, condensing into a 3-inch-tall figure in the end. His soul became even more condensed as he wildly rammed against the restraints of the Saint Artifact. He knew that if he could not break free from the Saint Artifact's restraints, he would not be able to harm Jinshin at all. This was because his soul had been firmly trapped by the Saint Artifact's power. It was impossible for him to spread, let alone devour Jinshin's soul. However, no matter how hard the Blood Demon Emperor tried, he was unable to break free from the Saint Artifact's restraints. He could not even make the golden light waver. At this moment, another sword condensed and shot toward the Blood Demon Emperor's shrunken soul with lightning-like speed. However, the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was extremely condensed now, so Jinshin's attack failed to harm him. Unless you possess the strength of a 15-star expert, you won't be able to harm the Emperor. Brat, the Emperor has changed his mind now. The Emperor won't devour you anymore, so why don't you let the Emperor out? If we continue to remain in this stalemate, we won't be able to do anything to each other. The Blood Demon Emperor finally gave in. He had once been able to look down on everyone with his strength, but he was no longer as mighty as before. In his current state, any random 15-star expert could obliterate him. Blood Demon Emperor, if I've guessed correctly, your soul has become so powerful because you've absorbed the vital energies in the blood. If it weren't for the vital energies in the blood, you would still be in a slumber right now. You would have vanished before long. I'd like to see just how long you can last after absorbing the vital energies of the sea race and the vicious beasts. Jinshin spoke extremely coldly as he constantly used his soul to attack the Blood Demon Emperor. The Blood Demon Emperor's face immediately sank. Clearly, Jinshin had hit the nail on the head. Just as I thought. Blood Demon Emperor, since you want to harm me, I, Jinshin, will definitely not leave you alone. Let me exhaust your power right now and make you vanish completely, said Jinshin. Chapter 9:34. The Blood Demon Emperor's eyes were filled with determination. He said, who am I? The Blood Demon Emperor? If you want the Emperor to vanish, then the Emperor will make you pay the price. If you wanted to pay the price, then you'd better break through the restraints of the Saint Artifact first. Otherwise, you won't be able to harm me at all. Jinshin's cold voice rang out. His soul was protected by the Saint Artifact, so only the Holy Emperor could break through it. He did not believe that the Blood Demon Emperor would possess such strength in his soul form. I'll let the Emperor break through your so-called Saint Artifact's defenses right now. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul began to rapidly shrink. In the blink of an eye, it went from a 3-inch-tall figure to a thumb-sized bead. The bead was completely blood-red and shone with a demonic red light. It actually seemed to be able to suppress the golden light from the Saint Artifact. The Emperor has sacrificed half of his soul to condense Amagami. Please help me break through this tower, Amagami. The Blood Demon Emperor's voice rang out from the blood-red bead. Suddenly, his soul rapidly weakened while the blood-red bead shone brightly. It actually broke through the restraints of the Saint Artifact's golden light and enveloped Jinshin's sea of consciousness. Amagami, that's Amagami. Why has the Amagami of the Empyrean Demon Emperor appeared here? Suddenly, the sword spirits' voices rang out in Jinshin's sea of consciousness. Their voices were filled with surprise. Soon after, two extremely powerful lights, one violet and one azure, rose up from the depths of Jinshin's sea of consciousness. They rapidly expanded throughout Jinshin's sea of consciousness. With the appearance of the azure and violet lights, the blood-red light from the Empyrean demon orb came to a halt. The two lights quickly invaded Jinshin's sea of consciousness and actually surrounded the blood-red light from Amagami. Soon after, the two lights rapidly dimmed, causing Jinshin's sea of consciousness to become blurry. It became chaotic where nothing could be seen. Everything was gray as far as the eye could see. Amagami, even the Empyrean demon emperor, doesn't have the courage to harm our master, let alone you. If you know what's good for you, piss off. Don't force me to attack you. The voices of the Ziying sword spirits rang out in all directions. Soon after, the chaotic space in the surroundings suddenly transformed into a scene of outer space. In the scene, countless people were engaged in an intense battle in outer space. They fought until the ground collapsed and space was destroyed. Countless planets were destroyed from the shockwaves of their battle. Powerful corpses floated in space as countless droplets of golden blood covered the entire region. Every single droplet of blood possessed an unimaginable amount of energy, enough to easily kill any holy emperor. Two huge swords flew through the crowd of people on the battlefield. Both swords were tens of thousands of meters long and shone with a dazzling violet and azure light. Wherever the two swords passed by, they would leave behind broken limbs. Countless people had died to the two swords. The two swords were so powerful that they could shake up the heavens and destroy the world. These scenes were all real. They were scenes of the battle that the sword spirits had experienced in the past. They had been projected through their abilities. Amagami began to tremble violently, as if it was afraid. The red light that it emitted rapidly withdrew as well, completely hiding within the bead in the blink of an eye. Afterwards, it could not help but fall a little as if it was submitting. It did not dare to contend against the sword spirits. And no, none of this is real. None of this is real. Fake. These scenes are all fake. The Blood Demon Emperor's terrified cries rang out from Amagami. His voice was filled with deep fear. These scenes were projected by the sword spirits through their abilities, projecting what had happened in the past. The Blood Demon Emperor could not help but become immersed in them, as if the scenes were extremely realistic. Not only could he clearly sense how terrifying those people were, but he could also clearly sense just how terrifying a casual strike from them was. Every single person in the scenes was far more powerful than the Holy Emperor. Even if the Blood Demon Emperor was in his peak condition, he would not be able to block a casual strike from them. Just a single droplet of their blood would be enough to obliterate his soul. The strength of the people in the scenes had far exceeded what the Blood Demon Emperor knew. It was beyond his comprehension. A deep sense of fear immediately filled the Blood Demon Emperor's mind. I don't believe it. I don't believe this is real. It's all fake. The Blood Demon Emperor's terrified cries constantly rang out from Amagami. He had once spent several thousand years of arduous cultivation to reach the level of the Holy Emperor, becoming one of the few experts in the sea realm that could be counted on one hand. Even the three divine halls feared him. What kind of glory was that? Yet now, when he discovered that the great strength he had spent several thousand years of arduous cultivation was so weak in the eyes of the people in the scenes, he immediately experienced an extremely great impact. He struggled to accept it. Half of the power of his soul has been depleted. Master, why don't you destroy his soul? The sword spirit's voices rang out. With that, Jianshun did not hesitate at all. He immediately condensed the power of his soul into a sword and shot it at Amagami mercilessly. Jianshun's sword accurately struck Amagami, causing Amagami to gently tremble. A chilling cry immediately rang out from within. It was the Blood Demon Emperor's voice. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul was now half as weak as before. It was no longer able to block Jianshun's attack. Amagami, take me away from here. The Blood Demon Emperor's voice was filled with panic. He could already feel death rapidly approaching him. However, Amagami hovered there without moving at all. It did not listen to the Blood Demon Emperor's orders at all. At this moment, Jianshun's second sword of the soul had already been condensed. It viciously struck the Sky Demon God. The Blood Demon Emperor's miserable cry rang out once again. Amagami did not protect him at all. His soul had become extremely weak. Blood Demon Emperor, I'll send you on your way right now. Let me, Jianshun, have a taste of killing an expert like the Holy Emperor. Jianshun's voice was cold and emotionless. The third sword of the soul rapidly condensed and whistled through the air, striking Amagami with lightning speed. Bang! With a gentle sound, the Blood Demon Emperor's soul completely collapsed. It was directly wiped out in Jinshin's sea of consciousness. At the same time, a few fragments of memories regarding the Blood Demon Emperor drifted out. As this was Jinshin's sea of consciousness, Jinshin could clearly understand some of the Blood Demon Emperor's past from the fragments of memories. In the past, the Blood Demon Emperor was a cultivator with some talent in the Sea Realm. He was fortunate enough to be chosen by Amagami, who fused with his soul and taught him cultivation methods. From then on, his life underwent an overwhelming change. The Blood Demon Emperor worked hard to cultivate the cultivation method he had obtained from Amagami. His strength increased extremely rapidly, becoming a saint ruler in just over 200 years, a holy emperor in 800 years, and a holy emperor in 2,300 years. He was a legendary figure in the Sea Realm. Jinshin also learned from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories that he had ventured out when he had just become a holy emperor. He had founded one of the 3 great assassin organizations on the continent, the Bloodsword Sect, and taught them a cultivation method he had modified. Afterwards, the Blood Demon Emperor became enemies with the 3 halls. He fought against the 3 emperors in outer space and passed away in the end. However, his soul managed to escape under Amagami's protection, hiding in the Divine Hall to recuperate. The Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands had originally been created by the Blood Demon Emperor through his abilities. It was originally called the Blood Demon Divine Hall. After the Blood Demon Emperor's soul escaped, he fell into a deep slumber due to his weakness. When he woke up, he discovered that he was unable to leave the Divine Hall with the current power of his soul. Helpless, he could only hide in the Divine Hall and wait for his death to come. His soul would disperse by itself. Under the protection of the Empyrean demon Orb, his soul slumbered for 10,000 years without dispersing. 10,000 years later, his Divine Hall was discovered by a 16-star expert, who took it for himself. In order to prevent his existence from being discovered, the Blood Demon Emperor hid himself deep within the Divine Hall. Many years later, the 16-star expert who discovered the Divine Hall successfully became an emperor. He changed the name of the Divine Hall to the Ancient Music Divine Hall, becoming the renowned Emperor Ancient Music in the Sea Realm. Emperor Ancient Music passed away in the Ancient Music Divine Hall after 10,000 years. However, in that crucial moment, the Blood Demon Emperor suddenly appeared from within Amagami. While the Emperor was weak, he managed to devour his soul without being able to defend himself, prolonging his own death. Another 10,000 years later, the Ancient Music Divine Hall was discovered by the 8 Wastelands. The 8 Wastelands also took it for himself, changing the name of the Divine Hall to the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands never discovered the existence of the Blood Demon Emperor during the several thousand years he occupied the Divine Hall. In the end, the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands reached the end of his life. He could not bear to see his legacy end just like that, so he began to set up things in the Divine Hall in the final years of his life. He wanted to leave behind his legacy. When the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands reached the end of his life, he passed away on the 9th floor of the Divine Hall. His vitality was severed, and his soul rapidly dispersed. He was extremely weak. However, the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands had never thought that he would be suddenly attacked by the Blood Demon Emperor's soul in the final moments. The Blood Demon Emperor wanted to devour the Emperor's soul. The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands was much stronger than Emperor Ancient Music. In the final moments, he used all of his strength to fight the Blood Demon Emperor with his soul, turning the 9th floor of the Divine Hall into a mess. However, he was still devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor in the end. In this battle, the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was injured. He devoured the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands' soul to recover. Then, he used the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands' handiwork to make some changes to his arrangements in the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands. As a result, the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands that the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands used to choose his legacy became a scheme for the Blood Demon Emperor to possess him. So that's how it is. I never thought that the divine hall of the 8 wastelands would hide so many stories. The divine hall was originally created by the Blood Demon Emperor, but it changed its name because it changed 2 masters later on. The Blood Demon Emperor actually devoured the souls of Emperor Ancient Music and the 8 wastelands. I never thought that the Blood Sword sect of the Tian Yuan continent was actually created by the Blood Demon Emperor several tens of thousand years ago. Jinshin became extremely unsettled after learning all of this. His heart churned. Chapter 9:35. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul really is powerful. Now that his soul is dissipating in my sea of consciousness, I should be able to absorb it and strengthen my soul, Jinshin thought. Without any hesitation, Jinshin immediately dismissed his thoughts and began to devour the Blood Demon Emperor's soul. Jinshin was currently seated on the 9th floor. His eyes were closed, so no one knew what was going on. Newbies paced back and forth anxiously beside Jinshin. Although he already knew that the Blood Demon Emperor's soul had entered Jinshin's head, there was nothing he could do about the current situation. All he could do was worry. Jinshin, I really can't help you right now. You have to be fine. You have to make it through. Newbies prayed. He had been lured out of the Cross Mountains by Jinshin using the corpses of his kind in exchange for 10 years of time. However, after spending so many years together, Newbies and Jinshin's relationship had changed drastically. Their relationship was no longer one of mutual benefit. Instead, they were best friends. As a result, Newbies was extremely worried about Jinshin's current situation. At this moment, the pale-faced Tesnik slowly stood up from the ground. When the Blood Demon Emperor's primordial spirit entered his brain, it had already devoured a small portion of his primordial spirit. Tesnik's primordial spirit was severely injured, and he had only just recovered. Tesnik stared at Jinshin coldly as undisguised killing intent filled his eyes. He coldly said, "Emperor of the 8 wastelands, I never thought that you would still be alive. I never thought that the divine hall of the 8 wastelands would actually be part of your scheme. Your goal was to lure us in from outside, so you could choose a talented body to possess." Tesnik still did not know about the Blood Demon Emperor. He still treated the Blood Demon Emperor, who wanted to devour his soul, as the Emperor of the 8 wastelands. Emperor of the 8 wastelands, you must have devoured the soul of the ruler of the Turtle Clan. If you want to completely control the ruler's body, you'll need some time. This is the perfect time to kill you. Tesnik's face sank as he drew his blades. Newbies immediately stood in front of Jinshin when he saw how Tesnik wanted to attack Jinshin. He coldly said, "With the great Newbies here, don't even think about harming Jinshin. Piss off. You're not my opponent. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as crushing an ant." Tesnik's eyes were filled with disdain. He did not treat Newbies with any importance at all. How could the prideful Newbies endure Tesnik's provocation? A tremendous presence immediately radiated from his body as his eyes became extremely sharp at that moment. He did not hide his killing intent at all. Tesnik, anyone who dares to speak to the great Newbies like that will never have a good ending. In the eyes of the great Newbies, killing you is a piece of cake. If it were not for the great energy that someone left in your body, the great Newbies really would not treat you with any importance at all, Newbies said with a heavy voice. If it were any other time and place, I would definitely have a true battle with you and see just how great your abilities are. Unfortunately, I can't do that now. I need to eliminate the ruler of the Turtle Clan, or I might not be able to leave once the Emperor of the 8 wastelands completely takes control of his body. Newbies, I originally planned on using this Emperor's power to accept the legacy of the 8 wastelands, but I have to use it now. Let me use this sliver of Emperor's power to completely end the lives of you and the ruler of the Turtle Clan. An extremely terrifying power radiated from Tesnik's body. A strand of extremely pure energy slowly drifted out from his body before condensing at the tip of his finger in the end. This was Emperor's power. It was the power that a holy emperor had left in his body, and it was also Tesnik's greatest trump card. The sliver of Emperor's power was enough to heavily injure a 9th heavenly layer, Holy Emperor. Newbies' face became ugly. He could sense the power of the Emperor's power. If he faced it, he would definitely die. Tiznik stared at the Emperor's power at the tip of his finger and said, "To be able to die to this sliver of Emperor's power is a supreme honor for you. Newbies, Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, allow me, Tiznik, to completely end your lives right now." Killing intent exploded in Tiznik's eyes as he was about to unleash the Emperor's power at the tip of his finger. However, at this moment, a huge stone slab fell from the ceiling and landed on the ground with a heavy thud. This sudden change caused Tesniak's Emperor's might to involuntarily slow down, and he subconsciously looked up. On the ceiling of the palace, there was a big hole covered by a stone slab. A gentle light came out of the hole, but it was impossible to see what was inside. This is the core of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. It's the core that controls the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. Tesniak could not help but cry out in surprise. His face was filled with joy, and without any hesitation, he withdrew the Emperor's force from his fingertip and shot it into the glowing green hole. As soon as Tiznik disappeared into the hole, the green light from the hole rapidly vanished as well. When the green light completely dissipated, the hole had disappeared, and the ceiling of the 9th floor of the palace returned to its original undamaged state. Only a huge stone door was left lying on the ground. I never thought that would actually be the core that controls the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. Newbie stared at the ceiling regretfully as his eyes shone with scorching light. It was a pity that Tiznik possessed the Emperor's power. It was powerful enough to destroy the Divine Hall, so he did not dare to compete with him. With Tiznik's disappearance, the 9th floor returned to peace. Only Jianshan and Newbies remained. Jianshan was still absorbing the remaining power of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul as hard as he could right now. All of his attention was focused on his consciousness, so he had no idea what was happening in the outside world. He also had no idea that Tiznik had entered the core of the Divine Hall and would be able to control the Divine Hall soon. He would be able to use the Divine Hall's power as he wished. Jianshan could not sense the flow of time in his sea of consciousness. The only thing he could sense was that his soul was rapidly strengthening while the remaining power of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was rapidly weakening. Devouring a person's soul would be an extremely strange matter on the Tian Yuan continent because this was not the case in this world. It was basically impossible for something like this to happen in this world. The reason why the Blood Demon Emperor could devour the souls of Gulu and the 8 Wastelands was because he had Amagami's assistance. The reason why Jianshan could devour the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was because the Blood Demon Emperor's soul had entered Jianshan's sea of consciousness of its own accord. With a sliver of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, the collapsed soul should have vanished from the world, but due to the difference in location and environment, it remained in Jianshan's sea of consciousness. As a result, Jianshan was able to successfully absorb the Blood Demon Emperor's soul. Jianshan definitely would not have been able to do something like this in the outside world. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul contained a few fragments of memories and some comprehension of the mysteries of the world. When Jianshan absorbed the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, he possessed the fragments of memories and mysteries of the world as well, allowing his comprehension of the mysteries to skyrocket. Even though the mysteries of the world were only fragments and not complete, they still came from the Blood Demon Emperor. Jianshan benefited greatly from just a few fragments. His comprehension of the mysteries of the world that had remained at the first heavenly layer of Saint Ruler had actually skyrocketed to the 7th heavenly layer in such a short amount of time, catching up to the 2nd layer of the chaotic body. Time passed silently. After who knew how long, Jianshan finally absorbed all of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, allowing Jianshan's soul to rapidly grow as well. The only thing he felt regretful about was that he did not obtain any memories of Gulu or the 8 Wastelands from the Blood Demon Emperor's soul. It seemed like the Blood Demon Emperor did not obtain any memories of Gulu and the 8 Wastelands when he devoured them. Jianshan's sea of consciousness had calmed down long ago. Only the demonic red Amagami hovered there. Jianshan focused his attention on the Amagami. The Amagami clearly came from the same era as the sword spirits. Jianshan was filled with curiosity about the details of the bead. Xing, Qing Sua, just what is this Amagami? Jinshin asked the sword spirits. Right now, he could only obtain some information about the bead from the sword spirits. This was because even the Blood Demon Emperor did not know the true origin of the bead. He only knew that the bead was called Amigami and that it was a very special and mystical item. The sword spirits seemed to hesitate for a while in response to Jinshin's question before slowly answering. Master, the Amigami is the famous treasure of the Celestial Demon Emperor. It was refined using the essence blood of the Celestial Demon Emperor. It is a powerful demonic artifact. Who is the Celestial Demon Emperor? Is he very powerful? Why did his treasure end up here? Jinshin asked. The Celestial Demon Emperor was the first demon emperor of the demon world. Not only was she the #1 demoness of the demon world, she was also extremely powerful. She had been at the peak of the demon emperor realm for many years. She was only a step away from becoming a demon emperor. The Celestial Demon Emperor created the Celestial Demon Emperor's art of the Celestial Demon Emperor was even more powerful. At that time, it was considered a high-level cultivation method in the demon world. The god-devouring force that was cultivated from the Celestial Demon Emperor's art of the Celestial Demon Emperor was so terrifying that anyone who heard of it would die upon contact. The soul-devouring force is equivalent to the massacre force and baleful force that Master understands. These two forces are both evolved from the soul-devouring force. However, compared to the soul-devouring force, they are far, far too weak. Chapter 9:36. The Amigami is a powerful demonic artifact, but it's extremely special. It's completely different from regular artifacts. Once it accepts a master, it'll turn into nothingness and fuse with your soul, just like the Blood Demon Emperor. However, the Blood Demon Emperor has fused with the Amigami, so he can only obtain the Empyrean Demon Saint's cultivation method from the Amigami. He can't use the demonic artifact, or he would never have ended up like this, Zing explained to Jinshin. Looks like the Amigami is much more powerful than a Saint artifact, Jinshin murmured. The most powerful artifact he possessed right now was a Saint artifact, so he could not help but compare the Amigami to a Saint artifact. Master, the true power of the Amigami is beyond your imagination. If you compare a Saint artifact to a Saint artifact, it's impossible to compare them. In the past, Amigami only needed a strand of soul-devouring force to turn a Saint artifact to nothingness. Qing Sua's voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Jinshin shivered inside when he heard that. He was shocked by Amigami's strength. Saint artifacts were tough enough to be destroyed by anyone below the level of a holy emperor. Yet Amigami only needed a strand of soul-devouring force to turn a Saint artifact to nothingness. In other words, a strand of Amigami's soul-devouring force could easily kill a holy emperor. It's just a pity that Amigami is extremely weak right now. She must have been heavily injured in that battle. Zing's voice rang out again. Her voice was filled with pity. At this moment, Amigami suddenly shone with a weak red light. It gently trembled in Jinshin's sea of consciousness. At the same time, Jinshin felt like his mind was forming a connection with Amigami. This Amigami actually wants to accept a master. Aren't you overestimating yourself? Zing's voice rang out. Her voice was filled with undisguised anger and deep disdain. With a flash of violet light, she immediately cut off the process between Amigami and Jinshin. Amigami's red light flickered rapidly, flickering as if she had been wronged. She was like a little girl who had been bullied and was crying by herself. Amigami wants to accept me as her master? Doesn't that mean I can obtain the Empyrean Demon Saint's cultivation method? Jinshin asked curiously. Master, the Empyrean Demon Saint's Empyrean Demon Arts is indeed a high-level cultivation method, but it's nowhere close to chaotic force because the chaotic body is a supreme cultivation method that surpasses the apex. There's no need for you to practice the Empyrean Demon Arts because it will only affect your future accomplishments, explained Zing. However, there was one thing that he did not tell Jinshin, which was that no one had ever cultivated the chaotic body to the peak since ancient times. Master, Zing is right. Even if you reach the peak of the Empyrean Demon Arts, you'll only be able to reach the same level as the Empyrean Demon Saint back then. It'll be very difficult for you to break through to Demon Emperor. However, once you reach the peak of the chaotic body, you'll be able to reach the level of grand exalts. You'll be able to crush an expert like the Empyrean Demon Saint to death with a single finger. Ching Sua's pleasant voice rang out. It was as pleasant as music. Jianshun came to a realization. Although the Empyrean Demon Arts was a high-level cultivation method, it was clearly nowhere close to the chaotic body he currently practiced. The Empyrean Demon Arts was nowhere close to the chaotic body. If he practiced the Empyrean Demon Arts, it was extremely likely for his future accomplishments to be limited, preventing him from standing at the very apex. If that's the case, I don't need to practice the Empyrean Demon Arts. I'll focus on the chaotic body. Jianshun immediately gave up on the idea of practicing the Empyrean Demon Arts. Amagami, this is not a place for you to stay. You should leave. Afterwards, Xing and Ching Sua chased Amagami away, chasing Amagami out of Jianshun's sea of consciousness. Amagami seemed to have been greatly wronged. It constantly flickered with red light, as if it was crying silently. It had been forced out of Jianshun's sea of consciousness by the sword spirits. Amagami was a powerful treasure, but it was extremely weak, just like the sword spirits right now. Only people who practiced the Empyrean Demon Arts could use it, so it was completely useless to Jianshun, who did not plan on practicing the Empyrean Demon Arts. Jianshun's consciousness returned to his body. When he slowly opened his eyes, he immediately saw a demonic red orb. The bead was floating in the air in front of him. Are you Jianshun or the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands? A voice immediately rang out from nearby. Newbie stood 20 meters away vigilantly, staring sharply at Jianshun. His face was filled with worry and anxiety. Right now, newbies could not tell whether Jianshun had been possessed by the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. Seeing Newbie's nervous appearance, Jianshun could not help but smile. Newbies, I am still me. Not only did the Blood Demon Emperor fail to possess my body, his soul was even destroyed in the end. Jianshun, is it really you? Newbies immediately became excited. He had known Jianshun for a long time now, so they were extremely familiar with each other. He could confirm Jianshun's identity just from Jianshun's expression and tone. However, newbies immediately became stunned. What did you say? The soul that tried to possess you is the Blood Demon Emperor? Isn't he the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands? Jianshun gently shook his head and told newbies everything he knew about the Blood Demon Emperor. When newbies learnt that ancient music and the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands had both been devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor, he could not help but sigh in disbelief. Suddenly, Jianshun seemed to think of something. He looked around. Where's this Nike? Why don't I see him? Newbie straightened his face and immediately became stern. He said, Jianshun, this Nike has already entered the core of the Divine Hall. He's currently controlling the Divine Hall. I think he'll become the master of the Divine Hall before long. We need to stop him. Jianshun's face changed when he heard that. He suddenly raised his head to look at the ceiling, and his face immediately sank. He had learned some information about the Divine Hall from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories. The most important piece of information was the location of the core of the Divine Hall, and it just happened to be on the ceiling. The core of the Divine Hall has already been closed, Jianshun said sternly. Jianshun, have you learned how to open the door to the core from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories? Newbies asked hopefully. He had already learned from Jianshun that there was no exit to the Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands. The only way out was to take control of the Divine Hall and use its power to send people out. Jianshun shook his head. He only knew where the core of the Divine Hall was. He did not know how to open the door to the core. Then we'll just have to break open the door. Battle intent surged in Newbies' eyes. A terrifying presence radiated from his body. He had completely unleashed the might of a magical beast with half a foot in the 8th class. Let's try our best. Determination flooded Jianshun's eyes as well. They had no other choice now that things had developed like this. Although he had devoured a portion of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, he had not taken control of the Divine Hall. If he wanted to take control of the Divine Hall, he had to take control of the core of the Divine Hall. There were no other shortcuts apart from that. The core of the Divine Hall was the key to taking control of the Divine Hall. Jian Chun wielded the king weapon as his chaotic force surged into it. The king weapon shone with a black light, as the destructive presence it gave off was enough to make people shiver in fright. Although the current primal chaos force was not the true primal chaos force, it was not weak at all. A sharp roar rang out from beside him. Newbies had already vanished, replaced by a 30-meter-long python. It was majestic, noble, and prideful. Newbies had already reverted to his original form. He immediately began to charge up his most powerful secret technique. Dazzling gold and silver light shone around him as he opened his mouth and spat out a large ball of condensed venom. It shot toward the ceiling of the hall with lightning-like speed. The venom of golden-striped silver snakes was unrivaled in the world. It was one of the top 3 venomous snakes on the Tian-Yuan continent. The venom he had just spat out was from a secret technique, so its toxicity had reached a shocking level. Newbie's venom seemed to be able to corrode everything. When the venom made contact with the ceiling that the Holy Emperor had struggled to break through immediately began to show signs of melting. It began to melt at a visible rate, but only the outermost layer was melted before it was stopped by the power of the Divine Hall. It was unable to advance any further. After the venom, he spat out another 2 beams of light that were as thick as an arm. They struck the ceiling viciously and produced a great boom. The strike was actually no weaker than the full-powered strike of the Holy Emperor at the 3rd heavenly layer. At the same time, Jianshin launched a full-powered strike as well. He leapt into the air and stabbed the same spot that Newbies had attacked with his sane armament. Boom! With a great boom, Jianshin was knocked back by the violent shockwaves of energy, landing on the ground once again. Aside from a layer of skin that had been melted away by Newbie's venom, the door to the center of the hall was completely unscathed. Not a single mark was left behind. The defense of the door to the center of the hall is on par with the Divine Hall. We can't break through it with our current strength, Jian Chan said with a heavy voice. His complexion was extremely ugly. Once Tesnik gained control of the Divine Hall, the 2 of them would no longer have any bargaining chips to contend with him. They could only hide in the Saint artifact. This was because Jianshin had learnt from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories that gaining control of the Divine Hall meant gaining control of the power within the Divine Hall. Although the power within the Divine Hall could not be used to attack external enemies, it could be used as it pleased within the Divine Hall. Tesnik could use the power of the Divine Hall to deal with them. However, the power of the Divine Hall was on the same level as the power of emperors. Chapter 9:37. Perhaps we still have a method to get through the gate, Jianshan said with a straight face. Newbies rejoiced when he heard that. He stared at Jianshan in interest and asked, Jianshan, what other methods do you have? Find the Emperor armament and use its power to get through the gate, Jianshan said. The joy on Newbie's face rapidly vanished. He looked at Jianshan with a troubled expression and said, It's not like you don't know the power of the Emperor armament. We can't control it with our current strength, and even if we can control it, can we really break through the door of the hub with the power of the Emperor armament? Don't forget that the Emperor armament is still trapped in the Divine Hall. It doesn't matter whether the Emperor armament can get through the gate or not. We still have to try, because I can't think of any other methods. I just hope that the defenses of the gate aren't too powerful right now, said Jianshan. However, we need to make a breakthrough in our strength before we go for the Emperor armament. Once my chaotic body reaches the 3rd layer, I'll be able to stop being injured by the Emperor armament and control it with ease, Jianshan said in thought. All right then. I've reached the peak of Class 7 a long time ago. I'm half a step away from the 8 wastelands. If it weren't for the fact that we had to consider the limitations of strength in the Divine Hall back then, I would have broken through long ago. Once we break through, we really might be able to get through the gate with the help of the Emperor armament, Newbies said. Afterward, Jianshan and Newbies immediately entered the artifact space to cultivate. They planned on breaking through to the level of Holy Emperor in a single stroke. The defenses of the Saint artifact were extremely powerful. Even if Tisnek controlled the Divine Hall and attacked the Saint artifact with the power of the Divine Hall, he would not be able to break through the artifact in a short amount of time. As a result, the Saint artifact had become the only thing that supported Jinshin and newbies. Jinshin sat in the center of an extremely quiet hall within the artifact space. Mountains of high-class monster cores and a large number of supreme quality crystal coins were piled up around him, as well as a few fist-sized divine tier crystals. These items were what Jinshin relied on to break through to the third layer of the chaotic body. They would provide Jinshin with tremendous amounts of energy. As long as he had enough time, Jinshin would be able to successfully reach the third layer of the chaotic body. The first layer of the chaotic body allows me to possess the battle prowess of a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler, while the second layer allows me to possess the battle prowess of a seventh heavenly layer Saint Ruler. With the Ruler armament, I can unleash the strength of a ninth heavenly layer Saint Ruler, while the Saint armament allows me to possess the strength of a third heavenly layer Holy Emperor. Once I break through to the third layer, I should be able to surpass the 8th and 9th heavenly layer Saint Rulers in a single stroke and reach the level of a Holy Emperor. I just wonder how much strength I can unleash once I reach the level of a Holy Emperor with the Saint armament. Jinshin murmured to himself. He was filled with anticipation. And there's the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament already possesses such terrifying power when no one is controlling it. I wonder how much strength I can unleash once I reach the third layer of the chaotic body and use the Emperor armament. Will I be able to fend off Hall Elders? The golden silk armor woven from the silk of the primordial god Silkworm is still in the hands of a divine general of the Serpent God Hall. Although I don't know how to increase the defense of the silk, it's a rare treasure born from the world and is related to the crisis of the world. Once I'm strong enough, I'll definitely head to the Serpent God Hall personally and take the golden silk armor back. Jinshin felt a sense of urgency. He knew that he would be able to take back the golden silk armor soon. Once he broke through to the third layer of the chaotic body and grasped the Emperor armament, he would have enough strength to deal with the 4 divine generals of the Serpent God Hall. Cultivate, cultivate. I have to cultivate as soon as possible. This time, I have to break through to the third layer of the chaotic body as soon as possible, or I won't be able to leave this divine hall, let alone take back the golden silk armor. Jinshin quickly dismissed his thoughts and focused all of his attention on cultivation. The sword spirits appeared above Jinshin's head. They assisted Jinshin in refining the monster cores, crystal coins, and god-tier crystals in the surroundings. A faint smell of blood radiated from the high-class monster cores piled up in the surroundings. Jinshin had obtained these monster cores from the vicious beasts in the Divine Hall recently. The energy within the monster cores was extremely active at every moment, so refining them was much easier. Due to the lack of time, Jinshin only used fresh monster cores with active energy this time. He did not use the ancient monster cores from the artifact space that had completely solidified their energy. Although the monster cores were all high class, they had lost a lot of energy and had solidified, so refining them took a lot of time and effort. They were not suitable for him to use right now. As Jinshin refined the monster cores, newbies did not sit around either. He was currently cultivating in a quiet hall. Unlike Jinshin, newbies cultivated by devouring the essence of the old snake. The process was much easier and faster than Jinshin's. At this moment, there was an extremely narrow room in the center of the Divine Hall. The room was empty without any decorations. The only thing in the room was a Divine Hall that hovered a meter in the air at the center of the room. Although the Divine Hall gave off a majestic presence, it was extremely small. It was less than a meter in both length and width. If someone familiar with the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall were come here, they would definitely discover that this small Divine Hall was the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall that had shrunk countless times. At this moment, Tesnik was sitting cross-legged in front of the mini-shrine. His energy was continuously pouring into the mini-shrine in front of him. Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, I really never thought that you would still be alive. The legacy of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall was probably a scam from you. You've actually tricked all of us. But so what? I have the power of an emperor within me, let alone a soul like you. Even if you successfully possess the body of the ruler of the Turtle Clan, you'll still be extremely weak. I like to see how you block my attacks. I may not have obtained your legacy, but no one can stop me from controlling the Divine Hall. Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, once I completely control the Divine Hall, I might not even need to waste my power. Just the power of the Divine Hall will be enough to make you completely disperse. Tisnik's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Although the news of Octaterra Emperor's survival had a strong impact on his heart, he wasn't afraid because he already had a bargaining chip to deal with Octaterra Emperor. Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, you'll be dead in 5 years at most. It's just a pity for the ruler of the Turtle Clan. The mighty ruler of a clan has actually suffered such a miserable fate. In the blink of an eye, Jinshin had already spent a year in the Divine Hall of the Eight Wastelands. At this moment, the flame city that the flame mercenaries had constructed out of tungsten alloy on the distant Tianyuan continent had officially been completed. The majestic city wall was pitch black. From afar, it looked like a dragon crawling on the ground, exuding a vast and majestic aura. It made everyone feel an invisible pressure from the depths of their hearts. It was as if they were walking beside a peerless, ferocious beast when they passed by the city wall. The walls were 100 meters tall and several dozen kilometers long. Many magic crystal cannons had been set up on the walls, and several armored soldiers stood beside each cannon. They were all stern and cold. Today was the 3rd day since the completion of Flame City. At the same time, it was the busiest day since the city had been built. This was because the Vice City Lord of Flame City had invited all the people from the large clans and organizations within a radius of 100,000 kilometers to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This day was an extremely special and important day for Flame City. Not only had the king of the kingdom of Jessen hurried over from afar, but even the Chanyang ancestor in Changbo, who had founded Chanyang Prefecture, had come as well. It could be said that Chanyang Zhu Yunkong's life had been saved by Jinshin. If it were not for Jinshin's trip to the Sea of Illusory Stars to obtain the dragon saliva grass, he probably would not have been able to leave 3 Saint Island even if he died, much less return to the Tianyuan continent to reunite with his family. As a result, Chanyang Zhu Yunkong cared about his talented great-grandson to the extreme. The Flame Mercenaries had been personally founded by his great-grandson, so Chanyang Zhu Yunkong obviously placed great importance on his great-grandson's business. Apart from that, even Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, Tai Ta, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, and the others all emerged from seclusion to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony of Flame City. As the core members of the Flame Mercenaries, there was no way they would not participate in such an important event like the official opening of Flame City. After all these years of seclusion, the strength of Ming Dong and the others had increased drastically. Although they had not become saint rulers, all of them had become Heaven Saint Masters aside from Wang Yifeng. The person who improved the fastest among them was not the talented Ming Dong or Little Fatty, but the honest Tai Ta. Tai Ta's rate of improvement in the past few years could truly be described as godlike. It was so fast that it left people tongue-tied. He had actually caught up with them, completely surpassing Ming Dong and the others. He had reached the peak of Heaven's Saint Master and was only a step away from becoming a saint ruler. Although Tai Ta's rate of improvement was extremely fast, his changes were extremely great as well. In the past, he was burly and tanned like charcoal. But now, there was no longer any black skin on him. Instead, there was a sliver of gold. Under the sunlight, it shone with an unbelievable metallic luster. Tai Tai had become even taller and bullier other than his skin. He was now 4 meters tall. Coupled with his burly body, he seemed like a small mountain as he stood there. In particular, under his honest appearance, there would often be a sense of awe and dignity. Since Flame City was the first city on the Tianyuan continent to be completely forged from precious tungsten alloy, its name had spread across the entire continent a few years ago. As a result, the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Flame City was bustling beyond everyone's imagination. Apart from the people who had been invited to the ribbon-cutting ceremony, there were also many representatives from large factions and clans who had come from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, or even millions of kilometers away. An imperial protector of the Qinhuang kingdom had personally come with the 3rd prince, Qin Ji. There was also a great elder of the Tianqin clan who had come with Qin Shao, a travel-worn person. Apart from them, even some hermit clans and ancient clans that were rarely known to the public had come to congratulate him with gifts. Even the Grand Elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union had personally come with 3 saint rulers to congratulate them. This time, basically a third of all the organizations on the continent had gathered in the tiny city of Flame City. It was so bustling that it could be described as unprecedented. P.S. 17K has an event right now. Read 5 free chapters, and you can receive 1 RMB. You can also buy books for a month. It costs 30 RMB a month. You can read all of 17K's works for 1 RMB a day. We hope that you who like Jianshin and read books on Baidu, Tieba, and various other pirated websites can register an account with 17K. You will receive K coins for every free chapter you read. We support Sword God and Xiaoyao. 17K's original subscriptions had never been high. Once its popularity increased, the number of subscriptions would increase as well. Xiaoyao knew that there were quite a lot of readers on Tieba, but he would only visit it once in a while. We hope that the readers who read Sword God on Tieba can register an account with 17K. If they have any questions, they can post them in the comment section. Xiaoyao would answer everyone's questions from 8 o'clock in the morning to midnight every day. Chapter 938. Under the lead of the Vice City Lord, the upper echelon of the Flame mercenaries personally received the guests from various places within the city. The happiest and most excited person out of all the people who had come to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony had to be the king of the Kingdom of Jessen. The king was unable to contain his excitement as he stared at the majestic walls of Flame City and the many peak organizations he had never heard of before. The smile on his face never faded. This was because the first Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City, the most expensive city in the history of the Tianyuan continent, was his daughter, Yu Yu. Everyone in Raging Flame City agreed that Yu Yu would be the Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City. Not a single person dared to object. Flame City only existed because of Jianshin, and Yu Yu was Jianshin's fiancée. She was the person closest to Jianshin. At the same time, Yu Yu was outstanding in management and excelled in all aspects. She was extremely suitable for the position of Vice City Lord. It could be said that there was no one else in the large mercenary group who was suitable for the position aside from Yu Yu. The uniqueness of Flame City and its value meant that the city could not fall into the hands of outsiders no matter what. Although the captain of the Flame mercenaries, Jian Shun, had been implicated by the matter of the winged tiger god, and no one knew where he was right now, it did not diminish the glory of Flame City. This was because it was the only city wall on the Tianyuan continent that was completely forged from tungsten alloy. Its existence was comparable to the 7 capital cities that had stood for countless years. The ancient clan, the Tianmu clan, has come to visit. The ancient clan, the Morgan clan, has come to visit. More and more people from the various organizations gathered in the city as the loud and clear voice of the attendant rang out. Chanyang Zuyunkong and Bai Hai currently sat together in the huge imperial palace in the center of the city as they chatted over wine. Their faces were filled with smiles as they glanced at the resplendent hall from time to time. Their faces were filled with joy. I really never thought that my great-grandson would be so bold. He actually built such a large city out of tungsten alloy. It really is unbelievable. Chanyang Zhu Yunkong sighed emotionally. He was in extremely good mood. Bai Hai also smiled happily when he heard that. He said, Jianchun is indeed extremely capable. In particular, his talent for cultivation is unprecedented. He actually managed to become a saint ruler in just over 20 years. His future accomplishments will be unimaginable. Bai Hai seemed to think of something when he reached there. He gently sighed and said, It's just a pity that the child is currently embroiled in the matter of the winged tiger. The entire continent is searching for him. Although he's hidden overseas, none of us know whether he's in danger or not. I just hope that the child can return safely. The joy on Chanyang Zhu Yunkong's face gradually vanished when he heard that. He frowned and said, The matter of the winged tiger is indeed a problem. It's related to far too many things. If my great-grandson wants to return to the Tianyuan continent, he'll have to hand over the winged tiger unless he possesses the strength to contend against the protector clans. Bai Hai and Changyang, Zhu Yunkong, knew each other's identities long ago. In terms of status and seniority, they were both Jinshan's great-grandfathers. Although they were of different ages, they had become in-laws because of their relationship with Jinshan. At this moment, Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, Little Fatty, and Tai Ta gathered together in a garden within the imperial palace of Flame City. Unknowingly, a few years have passed just like that. I wonder where Jinshan is right now and how he's doing, Ming Dong murmured to himself. Not only had Ming Dong's strength increased by a lot during the past few years of secluded cultivation, but his entire bearing had changed as well. Compared to before, Ming Dong was much less impatient and much more composed. He seemed to have become much more steady and mature. "Don't worry, he'll be fine," a cold voice rang out. The person who had spoken was the cold and arrogant Dugu Feng. Dugu Feng was the same as before. He had not changed at all. Today is an important day for Flame City. As the first city in the history of the Tianyuan continent to be forged from tungsten alloy, the news of Flame City has already spread across the entire continent. It's impossible for Jinshan to not know. "Do you think Jinshan will make it back in time?" Little Fatty spoke as well. His voice was filled with eagerness. Not a single bit of fat could be seen on Little Fatty's body now. His former chubby figure had vanished long ago, and he had become much more lean and lean. Little Fatty's talent was very great. In the past, his talent had been suppressed because Uncle Xiao did not want him to participate in the matters of the Tianyuan continent. He only wanted him to live a peaceful life. Now that he began to focus on cultivation, his rate of improvement could be described as divine. Although it was nowhere close to Tai Ta's level, it was still incomparable to ordinary people with outstanding talent. Once Jinshan comes back, I'll definitely have a proper battle with him. I want to see whether I'm stronger or Jinshan is stronger, Tai Ta said with a muffled voice. Tai Ta, who was sitting there like a mountain of flesh, said in a low, muffled voice. His eyes flashed with excitement. Tai Ta was currently the strongest person in the group. Even Ming Dong was not Tai Ta's opponent. In particular, Tai Ta's brute force was even more terrifying than magical beasts. Tai Ta, if you want to fight with Jinshan, you would better work hard on increasing your strength to Saint Ruler first. You may be very powerful, but there's an insurmountable gap between Saint Ruler and Heaven's Saint Master, Ming Dong teased. I'm not afraid. I feel like I could defeat regular Saint Rulers now. Once Jinshan comes back, I'll definitely spar with him. I want to see just how great of a difference there is between me and him. Back when Jinshan and I were in Kargath Academy, the difference between our strength wasn't so great. I don't want to be left too far behind by Jinshan. Tai Ta was filled with confidence. He could not help but think about the time he spent in Kargath Academy with Jinshan. He could not help but smile foolishly. After spending half a day, Vice City Lord Yu, who was busy receiving guests from all directions, finally had some time to rest. At this moment, Sima Yu, who was dressed in a purple robe, was lying on a chair, rubbing her temples tiredly. As the Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City, she had to personally welcome all the people who had come to congratulate her. As a result, she was completely exhausted. After a few years, Yu had also changed a lot. She was much more mature now. Her face was still as beautiful as before. Her beauty was enough to cause the downfall of a city. Countless men would be moved by her. Furthermore, one could faintly feel a unique aura from her body that belonged to a superior. After managing the flame mercenaries for so many years, Yu Yu's presence had silently changed as well. Sister Yu, Liener is really happy. The day of our Flame City, standing on the Tianyuan continent, has finally arrived. We've been looking forward to this day for many years, and it's finally happening now. A gentle voice sounded out as by Lien, dressed in a luxurious dress, ran over with an excited look on her face. Yu Yu slowly sat up straight and said, "The people who have come this time have far exceeded my expectations." "It's just that." Yu Yu hesitated as she frowned slightly. "Sister Yu Yu, it's just what?" Balien blinked her bright eyes as she asked curiously. It's just that for some reason, I suddenly feel uneasy, as if something bad is about to happen, Yu replied. Bai Yin was stunned when she heard that. She furrowed her brows in thought and said, Sister Yu, I think your worries are unnecessary. Who on the Tian Yuan continent doesn't know that our flame mercenaries have the support of a protector clan? I don't think there's anyone who dares to make trouble for us. That's true, but why can't I calm down? Yu murmured as she sank into her thoughts. Bai Yin rolled her eyes and giggled. Sister Yu, don't tell me you're thinking about my brother. Yu blushed slightly. She pretended to be angry and said, Stop talking nonsense. At this moment, a large group of people had suddenly appeared 20 kilometers away from Flame City. There were so many of them that they were so densely packed that one could not see the end of them. There were at least several million of them. They formed a fan-shaped formation as they rapidly advanced towards Flame City. They were aggressive and had come with ill intentions. At the very front of the group, there were over 20 people of various ages riding Class 5 magical beasts toward Flame City. Every single one of them seemed extremely ordinary. They did not radiate with any energy at all, as if they were ordinary people who did not know how to cultivate. However, at a closer glance, it was not difficult to tell that they were extraordinary. Every single movement of any one of them seemed to contain an indescribable truth of the world, as if they could draw upon the energy of the world. All of them were hermits who had reached Saint Ruler at the very least. At the very center was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. His eyes were cold as he sneered. A powerful killing intent radiated from his body at all. He was Bai Lian. King Bai Lian, there are countless experts gathered in Flame City right now. Are you sure that those experts won't assist the Flame mercenaries against us if we take action right now? An old man beside Bai Lian said with a heavy voice. He was stern. Don't worry. I have a joint order from the 10 protector clans. Unless those hermits and ancient clans don't want to remain on the Tian Yuan continent anymore, I'd like to see if they dare to disobey the orders of the 10 protector clans, Bai Lian sneered. The king sneered, but his gaze never left the majestic, raging Flame City. His eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. Chapter 9:39. This time, in order to take down raging Flame City in one fell swoop, Bai Wang had made ample preparations. First, he used his father's relationship with Yi Yuan School's Grand Elder to convince the other guardian families of the 10 great guardian families to support him. Afterward, he personally traveled across the continent and convinced over 20 peak mercenary groups. These peak mercenary groups were all comparable to hermit clans, possessing a history spanning thousands or even thousands of years. They possessed great foundations and were powerful. Not only did they possess saint rulers, but they also possessed over 100,000 people. Therefore, when these 20 or so mercenary groups passed through the space gate personally set up by his father and the supreme elder of Yi Yuan School, they formed the current lineup. The total number of people had already reached several million, and every one of them was an elite. Their fighting strength wasn't weak, and their numbers were several times that of the Raging Flame mercenary group. Due to the fact that there were many experts gathered in Flame City right now, the presences of the experts were rather chaotic. As a result, the experts of the Flame mercenaries did not discover Bijuan's arrival. Only when Bijuan Wang and his saint rulers arrived within 10 kilometers of the city walls did the people on the walls discover them. They immediately notified the commander on the walls. The commander on the walls was a Heaven Saint Master. He wore armor completely forged from tungsten alloy. He arrived before the walls and stared at the large group of people slowly approaching from the horizon. There's actually so many people. Looking at their formation, they've clearly come with ill intentions. It's nothing good. Do they still want to take the city that belongs to us? Don't they know that the Raging Flame mercenaries have a powerful family backing them? The commander stationed on the city wall sneered. His eyes were full of mockery. He immediately turned to a person beside him and said, Andorra, Depu, you stay here. I'll go inform the Vice City Lord. Yes, sir. The commander quickly made his way to the Imperial Palace at the very center of the city. He reported everything that had happened to the Vice City Lord, Yu. By the time Sima Yu received the news, King Bai-Er's army of a few million mercenaries had already arrived 5 kilometers away from Raging Flame City. At such a close distance, all the experts in Raging Flame City could sense their arrival. Many people revealed looks of shock and uncertainty. Currently, there was no one on the Tianyuan continent who did not know that the Flame Mercenaries had the support of the Chanyang clan and Mercenary City. With such a great background, there was no organization that dared to provoke the Flame Mercenaries. Otherwise, the Flame Mercenaries would not have been able to monopolize the tungsten alloy mine for so long. It would have been split up between the Hermit and Ancient clans long ago. Yu Yu's expression immediately turned solemn when she found out that an enemy had invaded. She had a bad premonition long ago and knew that the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Raging Flame City would not be so peaceful. At the same time, she was even more certain that Raging Flame City was currently a gathering of dragons. Those who dared to cause trouble at this time were definitely not simple people. They must have prepared a foolproof plan. Yu Yu placed great importance on this matter. She did not dare to be careless at all. After receiving the news, she immediately contacted the experts of the Flame Mercenaries. Afterward, she quickly made her way to the city walls under the accompaniment of Chanyang Zhu Yunkong, Bai Hai, and Jitatai. At this moment, the several million mercenaries had silently stopped in an empty area 5 kilometers away from the city. All that could be seen was a dense mass of heads as they radiated with surging presences. The 20 or so saint rulers that made up the mercenaries' road class 5 magical beasts standing at the very front of the group. Although the gates of the city were wide open, Bai Hai and the others were in no hurry to attack. Before attacking the city, they needed to deal with the experts gathered in the city first. They needed to cut off the reinforcements of the Flame Mercenaries and isolate them. If the Flame Mercenaries did not have the assistance of the Hermit and Ancient clans, they would not be able to defeat the mercenaries gathered by Bai Hai with their strength alone. Raging Flame City's Vice City Lord, Yu Yu, stood on the city wall expressionlessly. Her eyebrows were furrowed together, and her expression was incomparably solemn. She knew that the bad premonition in her heart had finally arrived. Beside Yu Yu, Chanyang Zhu Yunkong, Bai Hai, Jetta, and Tai stood side by side. They all looked at each other. He stared fiercely at the black mass of mercenaries in front of him. State your names. Why have so many people gathered here during the ribbon-cutting ceremony? Please state your intentions, Bai Hai called out sternly. Bai Hai shouted in a deep voice. His loud voice was like thunder exploding in the sky, reverberating continuously between heaven and earth, spreading to a radius of tens of kilometers. Ha 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 ha. You can call us the Extinguishing Alliance. I'm sure you already know why we've gathered so many people here. Before long, the first city forged from tungsten alloy on the Tianyuan continent will belong to our Extinguishing Alliance, King Bida laughed. His eyes were filled with madness. Don't even think about taking over our flame city. Yu Yu's beautiful face was filled with anger. She was extremely furious. Flame City was a mission that Jianshan had given them before he left. It was Jianshan's wealth. Now that Flame City had just been completed, how could she allow someone to take away the city that they had built after so many years of painstaking effort? Bai Hai coldly stared at Yu Yu and evilly smiled. You must be the Grand Princess of the Kingdom of Jessen, Yu Yu. You're Jianshan's fiancée in name. This Jianshan's luck with women isn't bad. He actually managed to capture the heart of such a beauty. But what a pity, from today onwards, his fiancée belongs to me, the Bayan King. Everything he took from me, all the pain and humiliation he brought me, I, the Bayan King, will repay him 100-fold. Next to the king's voice was filled with malice. His voice was so loud that it spread throughout the entire Raging Flame City. Naturally, his insults towards Yu Yu were heard by everyone. Flame City immediately fell into an uproar. At that moment, whether it was the guests who had come for the ribbon-cutting ceremony or the members of the Flame Mercenaries, they all put down what they were doing and hurried towards the city walls. A few of the stronger people even took to the air. Bang! Ming Dong, who was seated in a pavilion in the Imperial Palace, smashed the stone table before him to pieces with a single punch. He furiously roared. Who is this bastard? How dare he insult my brother's fiancée? I, Ming Dongjue, will never forgive him. Let's go take a look and see who's insulting my sister-in-law. I, Taita, will tear him to pieces. The burly Taita stood up as well. His face was filled with anger. Now that Jianshun isn't here, we can't just watch as someone insults his fiancée. Let's go teach that person a lesson, Wang Yifeng said angrily. Wang Yifeng said with a face full of indignation. Soon after, he put his hand in his mouth and blew a loud whistle. Immediately, a 5-meter-long flying magical beast flew over from the distance and stopped in front of Wang Yifeng. Xiaohei, fly to the city walls. Someone's come to cause trouble. We have to teach them a lesson. Wang Yifeng directly leapt onto the back of the flying magical beast. It immediately flapped its wings and rose into the air, flying towards the city walls. Afterwards, Ming Dong and the others all hurried to the city walls as well. Grandpa Jun, Granny Wang. The flame mercenaries seem to have encountered some trouble. I wonder who's bold enough to come cause trouble at a time like this. A woman who was resting in the imperial palace spoke out in a lively voice. Her voice was extremely pleasant, making people feel numb and seductive when they heard it. If someone did not have a firm heart, they might even be bewitched by her voice. The woman was Tianmu Ling of the ancient Tianmu clan. Is there anyone on the continent who doesn't know about the powerful backing of the flame mercenaries? The person who dares to cause trouble at a time like this is either an idiot or has made sufficient preparations. They don't fear the backing of the flame mercenaries at all. This matter might not be as simple as it seems. Let's go take a look, said Tianmu Ling's grandpa Jun before the three of them left the imperial palace and hurried to the city walls. The people in the city surged. All of them hurried toward the city walls. The streets were filled with people, and there were even many heaven saint masters and saint rulers flying in the air. Basically, all of them were guests who had come to participate in the opening ceremony of the city. As countless people landed on the walls, the wide walls of Flame City became a sea of people in the blink of an eye. They were densely packed with people in all sorts of attire. Ming Dong and the others all gathered around you. They sternly stared at the army of several million mercenaries 5 kilometers away and asked, "Who are they and what do they want?" Yu Yu's face had become pale from anger. She replied, "They call themselves the Flame Extinguishing Alliance and want to steal our Flame City." Yu Yu's voice was filled with uncontainable anger. Flame Extinguishing Alliance. As the name suggests, isn't an alliance that wants to destroy our flame mercenaries? They've clearly come for us. How bold of them. Ming Dong's face became extremely sunken. What a powerful group. I can't even see through the 20-odd people at the very front. Don't tell me they're all saint rulers, little Fatty said with a heavy voice. Taita's eyes lit up when he heard that. He immediately became eager as battle intent surged in his eyes. He said in a muffled voice, "Saint rulers, huh? I like to see just how powerful they are. They've clearly come prepared. We can't be careless," Bahai said sternly with a frown. Chanyang Zhu Yunkong's face was icy cold. His gaze was extremely sharp as he sternly said, "Flame City belongs to my great-grandson. The things of Chanyang Prefecture can't be taken by just anyone." Chapter 940. The Bijui King. It seems like the Felicity Empire has a king called the Bijui King. Is he one of the 9 kings of the Felicity Empire, one of the 3 great empires on the continent? So what if he is? The 3 great empires may be powerful, but they're only at the level of ancient clans. How can they contend with the flame mercenaries who have the support of the protector clans and Mercenary City? The Bijui King is going to be in big trouble this time. He's fated to come with so many people and return in disgrace. If the flame mercenaries were easy to chew up, they would have been split up by the ancient clans long ago. The Bijui King is one of the 9 kings of the Felicity Empire. It's impossible for him to not know about the background of the flame mercenaries with his status, yet he still dares to come. Does he have something to rely on? Everyone discussed as they constantly guessed and expressed their opinions. However, even more people stood there as if they were watching a show. They did not plan on interfering at all, waiting for the final result. Yu and the others immediately revealed extremely ugly expressions when they heard the Bijui King's arrogant words. Changyang Zhu Yunkong flew into the air and hovered 100 meters above the walls. He radiated with a tremendous presence, causing the clouds to churn in the sky. Just a few of you are nowhere near enough if you want to take Flame City. I wonder how many Saint Kings you've invited. Jinshin frowned and said. Changyang Zhu Yunkong bellowed out. His voice boomed through the surroundings, and the presence he gave off made him fearless of the world. Although Changyang Zhu Yunkong's strength remained at the first heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, unable to break through, many Saint Rulers who far surpassed him could not help but look at him in a new light from the presence he radiated at this moment. Even the few holy emperor experts hidden in the crowd could not help but look at him curiously as they murmured to themselves. The Bijui King looked at Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He coldly said, "May I ask who you are? State your name." "Old man, Changyang Zhu Yunkong." Changyang Zhu Yunkong was emotionless. What? He's actually called Changyang Zhu Yunkong? Is he from the Protector clans of Changyang Prefecture? It's rumored that the Protector clans of Changyang Prefecture are split into the Zhu, Yuan, and Qing branches. Is he from the Zhu branch of the Protector clan of Changyang Prefecture? He's actually a member of the Protector clans. I never thought that there would be people of the Protector clans in Flame City. With the Protector clans of the Protector clans, the Bijui King is king is king. Is he going to return? Changyang Zhu Yunkong's identity was exposed before everyone, which immediately led to an uproar. The Protector clans had always been clans that only existed in legends on the Tian-Yuan continent because they were the most powerful clans on the continent. They had existed since ancient times and possessed a long history, spanning hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years. Their heritage was so great that no one could compare to them. They had not appeared in the world for a long time, and it was difficult to find traces of them for hundreds or even thousands of years. Even if they appeared, they would not be easily exposed to the world. Only a few hermit families and ancient families with thousands of years of history knew of their existence. However, without any exception, all the hermit clans and ancient clans who knew of their existence felt respect from the bottom of their hearts for the Protector clans. This was because the Protector clans had always played an important role as protectors of the Tian-Yuan continent. They never interfered with any of the conflicts on the continent, but they always silently protected the peace of the continent, stopping the invasions of the Beast God continent and other races. It was exactly because of this that the Protector clans possessed irreplaceable statuses in the hearts of all the hermit clans and ancient clans. They were revered by everyone. However, this time, because of the winged tiger, the experts of the Beast God continent had come to invade the Tian-Yuan continent, forcing the Protector clans to appear. As a result, the news of the Protector clans had already spread across the entire continent. Everyone knew about them. Everyone's gazes immediately became attracted as soon as Changyang Zhu Yunkong's identity as a member of the Protector clans was revealed. Everyone's gazes toward Changyang Zhu Yunkong underwent a drastic change. There was respect, envy, and various other emotions. The king looked at Changyang Zhu Yunkong and sneered. Since there's a member of the Protector clans present, it can't be any better. I have something to show everyone next. I'll also ask the Protector clans to verify the authenticity of this news. The king took out a medallion and immediately channeled a strand of saint force into it. The token suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Soon after, a formless wave of consciousness spread out rapidly in all directions with Biju Wang as the center. It spread out for a distance of 1,000 miles before gradually disappearing. At that moment, all the saint rulers, including Changyang Zhu Yunkong, closed their eyes. The pulse from the medallion was a message. It had been created through a special secret technique by the Protector clans. Anyone who had reached Saint Ruler could clearly see the contents of the message. The Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance who stood in the same row as Bijin obviously received the message from the medallion as well. They all smiled happily. At that moment, Their lingering fear for Flame City had completely vanished. Impossible. How can this be? Chanyang Zhu Yinkong slowly opened his eyes as his complexion became very ugly. Bai Hai, Jitatai, and all the other saint rulers who had come to attend the ceremony opened their eyes as well. Their expressions all changed. They were no longer able to maintain their previous composure. Jitatai and Bai Hai's complexions became extremely ugly. They were so sunken that they almost dripped with sweat. In particular, Bai Hai's eyes were filled with uncontrollable anger and reluctance. Only saint rulers could sense the mental fluctuations from the token. That was why Ming Dong and Yu Yu, who were standing on the city walls, had no idea what was going on. Great-grandfather Bai Hai, what's going on? Yu Yu asked anxiously. Everyone's expressions made the bad premonition in her heart grow stronger. The 10 protector clans want to destroy our city, Bai Hai said with a heavy voice. What? The 10 protector clans want to destroy our city? Why is that? Yu Yu's complexion drastically changed as she immediately paled. The City Lord of Flame City is a member of the 10 protector clans, and there's an agreement between the 10 protector clans that they cannot interfere with the matters of the Tianyuan continent. As a result, the existence of Flame City has gone against the agreement. They want to make our city disappear and warn the other clans to not help us fend off any attacks, Bai Hai explained. What? How can this be? Sima Yu Yu's beautiful face turned pale without a trace of blood. She simply couldn't accept this. The 10 protector clans were the most powerful and ancient clans on the Tianyuan continent. If they wanted someone to disappear, even ancient clans with experts like the Holy Emperor would not be able to escape, let alone the Flame Mercenaries who were nowhere near as powerful as the ancient clans. The Flame Mercenaries had completely relied on the deterrence of the 10 protector clans from Chanyang Prefecture and Mercenary City to occupy the tungsten alloy mine. If they lost the protection of these two organizations, it would have been impossible for the Flame Mercenaries to hold onto the tungsten alloy mine for so long. Sigh, I never thought that something like this would happen. The 10 protector clans have personally spoken. No one dares to help the Flame Mercenaries now. Tianmuling's grandfather Jun let out a long sigh. His face was filled with helplessness as he slowly pulled Tianmuling back. He had already decided not to participate in this matter. Tianmuling's expression became extremely complicated as she silently stood beside Grandpa Jun. She knew that no one could help the Raging Flame Mercenaries this time. Otherwise, it would be challenging the dignity of the 10 great protector families, and the consequences would be unthinkable. There had never been a single person or clan that dared to challenge the dignity of the 10 protector clans on the Tianyuan continent since ancient times. Afterwards, the experts who had originally come to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony all backed away. They did not participate in this matter. In the blink of an eye, Yu Yu and the others were isolated by the crowd. Only the Huang clan's ancestor, Huang Tianba, was still standing in the same place, but the light in his eyes was flickering. He seemed to be hesitating. The king knew that the time was ripe when he saw the situation on the walls. As a result, he waved his hand and called out, "Kill! Take this precious city! Brothers, let's go! Everyone kill! Charge! Seize Raging Flame City! Flame City will belong to us in the future. Brothers, charge! Protect Flame City with our lives! Protect our home with our lives! Protect our home with our lives! We can't let it fall into the hands of others. Flame City is the glory of the Flame Mercenaries. We can't let others take it away. Kill!" Cries shook the surroundings as the several million people from the Extinguishing Alliance charged toward the city like a flood. None of them were weak, so the 100-meter-tall walls were unable to stop them. A few Earth Saint Masters leapt onto the walls and engaged in a great battle with the Flame Mercenaries. Although there were over 100 magical crystal cannons on the walls of Flame City, they had never expected that they would be attacked during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As a result, the cannons had not been charged with magic cores, so they had been reduced to mere decorations. Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, Tai Ta, and many other experts of the Flame Mercenaries all joined the battle. As they swung their saint weapons, they constantly killed the members of the Extinguishing Alliance. In the blink of an eye, they were all covered in blood. Yu Yu and Bai Lian stood together as they stared at the surroundings with pale white faces. Neither of them had thought that such a great change would occur during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This day should have been a joyous and exciting day for the Flame Mercenaries, but in the end, it turned into a scene of flesh and blood splattering across the ground. The ground that should have been filled with red fireworks was replaced by blood. The laughter that should have been filled with laughter was replaced by miserable cries. The dramatic change in front of them made Yu Yu and Bai Lian feel that it was hard to accept. Bai Hai, Jitatai, and Chanyang Zhu Yunkong stood beside Yu Yu and Bai Lian. They stared at the 20 or so saint rulers who had yet to move with sunken faces. Chapter 941. Bai Hai, Jitatai, and Chanyang Zhu Yunkong stood beside Yu Yu and Bai Lian. They stared at the saint rulers in the distance who had yet to take action with sunken faces. Several kilometers away, Biju Wang coldly stared at Jitatai, Bai Hai, and Chanyang Zhu Yunkong. Heavy killing intent appeared in his eyes as he coldly said, "The Flame Mercenaries only have you saint rulers. Fine, I'll kill all of you today and wipe out the Flame Mercenaries. And Jinshin's fiancé and his sister. They'll all belong to me from today onwards. Jinshin, I swear that I'll make you suffer so much that you'll wish you were dead. I'll make you regret everything you've done to the Heavenly Enchantress. This is the consequence of offending me." By shoulder-to-shoulder's hatred for Jinshin was so great that it was enough to drive by shoulder-to-shoulder mad. The source of this hatred came from the Heavenly Enchantress. Biju Wang leapt off his Class 5 magical beast and charged toward the walls as killing intent radiated from him. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred and resentment, as if he had some deep grudge with Bai Hai and the others. At that moment, Biju Wang had completely transferred his hatred for Jinshin to the people around Jinshin. Bai Hai and the others immediately darkened when they saw Biju Wang charge in their direction. They called out, "The person who's coming is very powerful. He's already a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler. Yunkong, take the 2 of them and leave. Jitatai and I will stop him." Before he could finish his sentence, Bai Hai flew out, his saint force surging around him as he charged towards the Baiyan king. Behind him was Jitatai, who was wielding a saint weapon. The 2 of them wanted to block the Baiyan king's attack. "Great-grandfather, come back quickly. They have over 20 saint rulers. We're not their opponent," Bai Lian anxiously called out from the walls. Her face was filled with worry. "Now is not the time to be stubborn. Let's leave this place first." With a wave of his hand, an invisible energy immediately wrapped around Yu Yu and Bai Lian, taking them away. Although Chanyang Zhu Yunkong had become a saint ruler, he was still a 1st heavenly layer saint ruler. At the same time, the seal in his head had yet to be removed, so he was unable to use his full strength. He was not the opponent of those saint rulers who had been saint rulers for many years. Boom! A loud boom rang out as Bai Hai and Jitatai joined forces to engage in a fierce battle with King Primus Primus. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, an earth-shattering might erupted. In just one exchange, the void shattered, and a pitch-black spatial fissure appeared. Violent shockwaves of energy raged out from the epicenter of the battle, rapidly spreading in all directions. Thousands of people who were still fighting on the ground were thrown off their feet by the shockwaves, injuring them. "You dare to fight me with just the 2 of you? You overestimate yourselves." Bibi Wang stared at Bai Hai and Jitatai. His voice was filled with disdain, and he did not use his saint weapon. Instead, he threw a punch at Jitatai. This punch contained an understanding of the mysteries of heaven and earth. The fist seemed to have completely melded into the void, becoming one with heaven and earth. Its speed was so fast that Jitatai could not dodge it all. It hit Jitatai hard in the chest with lightning speed. Jitatai spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell from the sky. He was still a 3rd heavenly layer saint ruler, so the difference between him and Baiyan King was just too great. Baiyan King had heavily injured him in a single clash. With Jitatai's withdrawal, Bai Hai was the only one left to fight Bai Hai King. Baihai had already reached the 6th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, only one level lower than Baihai. Furthermore, Baihai had only broken through to the Saint King realm after comprehending the mysterious beast skin. His foundation was very solid. Although he was weaker than Baihai, he could still fight 300 rounds with Baihai Wang. He would not be defeated in a short period of time. The battle between Baihai and Bai shoulder to shoulder was extremely intense. Every time the two of them clashed, a loud rumbling sound would erupt. It was like a thunderclap, deafening to the ears. Violent energy shockwaves rushed out in all directions, causing the earth to crack and mountains to collapse. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Flame City was also heavily impacted by the ripples of their battle. However, Flame City was constructed from tungsten alloy, so its defenses were comparable to the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent. Although the battle between Saint Rulers was intense, it was unable to shake Flame City at all. Baihai and Baihai King fought as they flew into the sky. Very soon, they reached an altitude of 10,000 meters and became 2 tiny white dots. They were afraid that the ripples of their battle would injure too many people and cause the celestial decay to descend. As a result, they moved the battle far away. The people of the Extinguishing Alliance, which consisted of over 20 peak mercenary groups, continued to fight the Flame Mercenaries. The experts from the various clans of the Tianyuan continent all watched from afar. None of them had any intentions of interfering. There was an insurmountable difference in both numbers and strength between the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries. As a result, the Flame Mercenaries had already fallen to a disadvantage as soon as the two armies clashed. They were firmly suppressed by enemies several times their number, suffering heavy casualties. Ming Dong, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, Dugu Feng, and the others were also doing their best to kill the enemy. They were constantly killing the members of the Extinguishing Flame Alliance around them. However, the one who stood out the most amongst them was Taita. Taita was bathed in blood. His tall and sturdy body was still so eye-catching in the sea of people, like a moving mountain. Taita's clothes were in tatters while the axe in his hand had been dyed red with blood. It constantly dripped with blood. Every time he swung his axe, he would kill several people from the Extinguishing Alliance. No one could stop the might of Taita's axe. Taita was like a harvester, slaughtering his way through the people of the Extinguishing Alliance all by himself. The number of people who had died to his hands was already uncountable. Behind him was a path paved with corpses. Not only was Taita extremely powerful, but his body's toughness was almost abnormal as well. He did not even try to dodge the attacks from the surroundings. He used his body to endure them all. Attacks as powerful as Earth Saint Masters could not even leave a scratch on Taita's body. Even Heaven's Saint Masters struggled to deal too much damage to Taita. Taita's body was so tough that it could actually rival Jinshin's chaotic body. The Heaven's Saint Masters of the Extinguishing Alliance discovered Taita's strength and worked together to attack him. However, as soon as they approached Taita, they were all blown away by a swing of his axe. They all vomited blood and were heavily injured. There's a powerful one here. Get a few more people and kill him together. Someone began to call for help. Very soon, over a dozen Heaven Saint Masters flew over from nearby. They formed an inescapable net around Taita before shooting a powerful sword chi at him. Taita remained calm. He held his axe in one hand and swung it in a circle. With just a swing of his axe, he easily destroyed the sword chi from the Heaven Saint Masters. The violent ripples of energy struck his majestic body, but they were unable to shake him at all. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood there firmly. Taita stomped off the ground and immediately flew toward a Heaven Saint Master with lightning-like speed. The blood-soaked axe in his hand shone with a faint golden light as he swung it toward the Heaven Saint Master's head. This axe seemed to contain some kind of heaven and earth principle, and it brought along a mysterious Tao rhyme as it suddenly chopped down from the sky. The Heaven Saint Master immediately raised his saint weapon above his head to block Taita's attack. Ding! With a clear sound, the Heaven Saint Master's saint weapon was actually shattered by Taita's attack. However, The axe did not slow down at all. It continued toward the Heaven Saint Master's head, cleaving his body in half. It was as fragile as tofu. The expressions of the other Heaven Saint Masters drastically changed when they witnessed this. Disbelief filled their faces. "Why, your Saint Ruler," a Heaven Saint Master said with a trembling voice. In their eyes, only a powerful Saint Ruler could destroy a Heaven Saint Master's Saint weapon so easily. "I'm not a Saint Ruler," Taita replied with a muffled voice. He then charged toward the Heaven Saint Masters with his axe. The axe flickered with a faint golden light. Every swing of the axe contained some sort of mysterious truths of the world possessing great power. Even his 6-cycle Heaven Saint Masters were unable to block it. They were all cleaved in half by Taita's attack with their saint weapons. In the blink of an eye, half of the Heaven Saint Masters had been killed by Taita. All of them had been cleaved to death by a single swing of the axe. The remaining half of the Heaven Saint Masters were frightened out of their wits by Taita's strength, so they began to flee for their lives. Taita seemed to be certain that he had to kill them, so he chased after them with all his might. "Old Captain, save us!" A few frightened Heaven Saint Masters began to call for help. The Saint Rulers who had not taken part in the battle immediately noticed the situation. An old man moved slightly and arrived before Taita in the blink of an eye. He coldly stared at Taita and said, "Sir, you're quite skilled. However, the Flame Mercenaries are done for. Why don't you join our Flame Extinguishing Alliance? With your strength, you'll definitely be treated with great respect." Taita completely ignored the old man's attempt to rope him in. Without saying anything else, he directly swung his axe at the old man. The old man's face turned cold, and with a thought, the space around Taita froze, trapping Taita's burly body inside, unable to move at all. Everyone below Saint Ruler is an ant. Old man can kill you as easily as flipping his hand. He only spared your life because he saw that you weren't weak. What do you think? Are you willing to join us? The old man arrogantly asked. His gaze toward Taita was filled with disdain. As a Saint Ruler, he indeed did not take Taita, who was only a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master, seriously. Taita was stern. He angrily roared at the sky, and immediately, a faint, golden light began to radiate from his body. Even the axe in his hand began to glow with a hazy golden light. Although it was very faint, it was still slightly more powerful than the Heaven Saint Masters he had killed earlier. Tower's frozen body suddenly moved. At that moment, his body seemed to be unaffected by the frozen space. He raised his axe high and switched from holding it with one hand to holding it with both hands. Immediately, an indescribably vast presence radiated from Taita. At that moment, Taita seemed to have fused with the axe, becoming a single entity. At that moment, he seemed to possess an indescribable charm, resonating with the world from afar. He had obtained a sliver of a mysterious power that originated from the world. Taita took a step forward, and the axe above his head turned into a streak of golden light. He directly ignored the Saint Ruler's frozen space and swung down with lightning-like speed. How can this be? The Saint Ruler paled in fright. He found it difficult to accept that a person who was clearly only a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master could ignore his frozen space. However, what made him feel even more disbelief was that he actually felt a great threat from Taita's attack. Chapter 942. Taita's axe shot through the air with a faint, golden light, colliding with the Saint Ruler's blade. Boom! With a violent boom, the axe and blade violently collided in the air. Immediately, violent ripples of energy began to rapidly expand in all directions from the center of the battle. It blew away all the people within 1,000 meters. Only Heaven Saint Masters were able to stabilize themselves. As for the ground within a radius of 1,000 meters, a thick layer of soil was scraped up under the raging aftermath of this violent energy. Dust flew between heaven and earth, and Yin's city filled the air, enveloping the entire battlefield. Taita's body flickered with a faint, golden light. The violent ripples of energy struck him, but he actually did not move at all. He was as steady as a mountain. Taita remained in the same posture as before. The axe in his hands was firmly pressed against the Saint Ruler's head. The Saint Ruler used his Saint weapon to block Tai Ta's axe. His entire lower body had sunk into the ground, only exposing his waist. His face was rather pale, but was mostly filled with shock and disbelief. Tai Ta was actually on par with the Saint Ruler as a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master, and from the looks of it, he even seemed to have the upper hand. The 20 or so Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance who had yet to participate in the battle discovered what was happening. Shock filled their eyes as their hearts filled with shock. He's clearly only a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master, yet he's actually able to take an attack from a Saint Ruler without being defeated. Just who is that person? He actually possesses such terrifying battle prowess. A middle-aged man in tight robes said with a heavy voice. His voice was filled with deep surprise. Lu Zhang's strength has already reached the 3rd heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. Even 1st heavenly layer, Saint Rulers would struggle to take an attack from him without being injured. Just who is that person? He's clearly a Heaven Saint Master, yet he possesses such terrifying strength. And that person seems to be able to ignore Lu Zhang's frozen space. That's unbelievable. Just how'd he do it? Did he use some kind of powerful ancient secret technique? The Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance all speculated. All of them found it hard to believe that Tai Ta could match a 3rd heavenly layer Saint Ruler as a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master. Everyone below Saint Ruler was an ant. This was a saying that had always been passed down on the Tianyuan continent, and no one had ever broken it. Today, they had actually witnessed someone break this legend that had been passed down for countless years. To them, this was simply an impossible miracle. Ming Dong and the others obviously saw this as well. All of them widened their mouths as disbelief flooded their faces. Although they knew that Tai Ta was very powerful, they had never thought that he would be so powerful that he could reduce a Saint Ruler to such a horrible state as a 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master. The experts of the hermit clans and ancient clans who were watching from afar also noticed Tai Ta's extraordinariness. They all stared at Tai Ta with flickering eyes. Well done, Tai Ta. Kill them all. Kill all these bandits who have invaded our homeland. Wang Yifeng's voice rang out from afar. It was filled with excitement. Tai Ta immediately remembered why they had come when he heard that. Anger immediately flooded his face, and he bellowed out. Suddenly, he exerted force with his arms, and an extremely tremendous force surged out from his body. He actually pushed Lu Zhang another foot into the ground through the axe, leaving only his chest above the ground. Lu Zhang immediately became furious when he thought about how he, a mighty Saint Ruler, had been reduced to such a miserable state by an ant-like Heaven Saint Master. To him, this was a great humiliation that he would never be able to wash away. He was too ashamed to face anyone. This was because something so exaggerated had never happened on the Tianyuan continent. A hermit Saint Ruler had actually been pushed into the ground by a Heaven Saint Master. Lu Zhang could already imagine that his reputation on the Tianyuan continent would definitely skyrocket after this battle. However, it would not bring glory or status, but endless mockery and mockery. The more Lu Zhang thought about it, the angrier he became. In the end, he could not help but let out a roar that shook the heavens and earth. Saint Force surged out of his body as he used all his strength to push back Tai Ta's axe that was pressing down on his head. His body immediately rose from the ground, leaving behind a meter-deep hole where he had been standing. "Junior, the old man will cut you to pieces," Lu Zhang angrily roared. Lu Zhang let out a furious roar. The machete in his hand was burning with raging flames. It was mixed with the rich power of heaven and earth, and it slashed toward Tai Ta's head with lightning speed. This time, Lu Zhang had used his full strength. He had completely unleashed the strength of a 3rd heavenly layer Saint Ruler without holding back at all. Tai Ta showed no fear at all. He gripped his axe with both hands and swung it at Lu Zhang as well. The axe and blade collided, erupting with a great boom. Both of them were pushed back by the violent shockwaves. Suddenly, an extremely powerful battle intent filled the surroundings. It seemed to be able to invade the blood of people, bewitching them. It affected everyone unknowingly, actually making the battle between the Flame Mercenaries and the Extinguishing Flame Alliance even more intense. Under the influence of the battle intent, both sides seemed to become completely engrossed in the battle. They forgot about pain and forgot about themselves. The only thought that remained in their minds was to fight. Fight! Fight! All the experts watching from afar were shocked. They could obviously sense the battle intent that filled the battlefield, so they all looked at Taita. This was because they could all clearly sense that the battle intent came from Taita. At this moment, Taita hovered 3 meters above the ground like a god of war. He radiated with a powerful battle intent. His imposing figure was just like an ancient god of war. He slowly raised the huge axe in his hand. The golden light on the axe grew brighter and brighter, condensing into a huge, golden axe above his head in the blink of an eye. He then swung it toward Lu Zheng. With the swing of the axe, all the battle intent in the surroundings gathered. It fused with the axe from all directions at an unbelievable speed, causing the axe to become even more solid. Swish! The speed of the giant axe's chopping was very fast. A golden light flashed and arrived at the top of Lu Zheng's head. Then it instantly cut off his head. Lu Zheng did not move at all. A finger-sized crack had appeared on the ground between his legs. The crack was straight and several thousand meters long. Taita slowly closed his eyes after the attack. Not only did the golden light around him show no signs of weakening, but it became even brighter. A battle intent that was much purer and thicker than before radiated from him once again, directly surging into outer space. A few strands of hair fell from Lu Zheng's head. Immediately afterwards, an extremely thin red line appeared on his forehead. The red line constantly extended, and in the blink of an eye, it extended from his forehead all the way to his neck. Only when it was covered by his clothes did it disappear. This was the blood that flowed from Lu Zheng's body. A golden light vaguely shone from the blood. It grew brighter and brighter. In the end, with a bang, Lu Zheng's entire body was split in half. He was dead. A third heavenly layer saint ruler had died, just like that. He had died to the hands of a 6th cycle heaven saint master. Everyone who was watching the battle from afar looked at this scene in a daze. Huge waves surged in their hearts, and they were extremely restless. Even though this had happened right before their eyes, all of them still found it hard to believe. They could not accept it. In their minds, all those below Saint Ruler were ants. This was an unchanging truth. It was impossible for Heaven's Saint Masters to harm Saint Rulers because Saint Rulers had already comprehended the mysteries of the world. All they needed to do was freeze space, and Heaven's Saint Masters would be immobilized. They would only be meat on the chopping block. Yet now, a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler had been slain so cleanly by a Heaven's Saint Master right before their eyes. Moreover, he had died in such a horrible manner. All of them felt extremely shocked. Taita hovered in the air with his axe in hand. The battle intent radiating from him constantly grew stronger, and the golden light from his body became brighter and brighter. This time, even a few Saint Rulers found it difficult to maintain their self-control. They felt their blood boil, flowing several times faster than usual. A powerful desire to battle actually rose up from the bottom of their hearts for some reason. They were tempted to find someone to fight to their heart's content right now. Unbelievable. The battle intent he gives off is actually affecting us unknowingly. What strange cultivation method is this? It's actually so terrifying, a Saint Ruler cried out. His voice was filled with fear. The other Saint Rulers were shocked as well. They stared at Taita closely, wanting to see what he was doing. At the same time, a majestic, snow-white divine hall stood silently in a world of ice and snow in the Arctic. Inside the temple, a person covered in a layer of silver-white armor was sitting cross-legged in a secret room. Only a pair of tightly shut eyes could be seen. Suddenly, she slowly opened her eyes and calmly looked in the direction of the Tian-Yuan continent. She murmured to herself, "The warring gods have finally awakened. I wonder just what level the power of his bloodline has reached and whether he could become a Grand Prime." Several 100,000 years ago, someone from the warring gods awakened. It's a pity that I couldn't interfere with the matters here, so he died here in the end. What a pity. What a pity. In the battle back then, the Grand Prime of the warring gods was slain by the Grand Exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens with the Azulate Sword. Yet here, the warring gods have actually joined forces with the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens. I wonder if this is a blessing or a curse. The Great Ice Goddess was heavily injured by the Grand Exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens with the Azulate Sword, and she still hasn't recovered. I wonder if the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens is the reincarnation of the Grand Exalt from back then. Chapter 943. The current situation is a mess. I've waited here for 3 million years. Why has the Saintess appeared at a time like this? Why has the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens come here? And it's because of such a complicated relationship. There's no need to worry about the warring gods. Once he understands the truth, I think he'll make a wise choice. If he makes the wrong choice, he can only vanish from the world. The warring gods were born from the world anyway. Once this generation dies, the world will give birth to another generation of warring gods after a few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 years. The person whose entire body was covered in a layer of silver armor let out a low murmur. His voice was pleasant to the ears, but it was filled with coldness, without the slightest hint of emotion. Outside the city, the golden light around Taita had already turned into a dazzling sun, enveloping him. It was impossible to see his figure from the outside. Taita's presence continued to climb. His battle intent that filled the surroundings became more and more powerful as well. When his presence reached its peak, a tiny streak of golden light shot out from his body, piercing into the sky. It seemed to extend beyond the heavens. At the same time, the energy in the surroundings began to surge. The energy in a radius of 10,000 kilometers gathered from all directions before being sucked into Taita's body like a whale sucking in water. When the dense energy gathered around Taita, it actually formed a visible vortex. The battle between the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries was still ongoing. Everyone was affected by Taita's will to fight. They forgot about themselves, forgot about pain, and no longer felt fear. The only thought that remained in their minds was to fight. Battle. Battle without end. Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, Wang Yifeng, Little Fatty, and so on were still affected. Only the saint rulers could control themselves as they slaughtered the Extinguishing Alliance. Tianmu Ling and the other juniors who had come with their seniors had already fainted. They had all been knocked unconscious by their seniors to prevent them from being affected by the battle intent as well. Taita's body seemed to be a bottomless pit. Large amounts of energy of the world were channeled into him, but he still did not reach his limit. He did not change at all. What is he doing? Just who is this person? He seems to be undergoing some sort of metamorphosis right now. Some of the Saint Kings in the surroundings guessed and stared at Taita in surprise. The process of Taita absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth lasted for almost an hour before it finally ended. The gathered yuan qi of heaven and earth slowly dissipated and finally returned to normal. Even the golden light from his body slowly receded, revealing Taita's tall and burly body. The blood on his body had already disappeared, revealing his skin with a faint golden luster. His majestic and firm muscles were bulging, giving people a strong visual impact. In between his eyebrows, there was a small and exquisite battle axe. Imprint. The battle intent that enveloped the world slowly dissipated. It formed an invisible energy that was invisible to the naked eye and entered Ta's body. In the blink of an eye, the world returned to normal. Without the influence of the supreme battle intent, the 1,000,000+ people of the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries all woke up. Immediately, a deep sense of exhaustion enveloped everyone, to the point where even their heads began to feel groggy. They seemed to have used up all the energy in their bodies when they had been immersed in the battle. Everyone could not help but think back to the battle they had been immersed in after waking up. All of their eyes were filled with confusion, while the expressions of the Earth Saint Masters and Heaven's Saint Masters drastically changed. Their faces were filled with shock. They could clearly recall what had just happened, but it was only at this moment that they suddenly realized that when they were immersed in the great battle, they couldn't control themselves at all. It was as if their bodies and souls were being secretly controlled by someone else. Affected by this, the people of the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame mercenaries no longer had the heart to continue fighting. They all stopped and returned to their own camps, leaving behind the corpses and the blood-soaked ground as a testament to the devastation of the battle. However, no one paid attention to the battle at this moment. Without exception, all of their gazes were gathered on Taita. Taita slowly landed on the ground. Even though the supreme battle intent that filled the surroundings had dispersed, an extremely powerful presence still radiated from him. His long hair fluttered despite the absence of wind as a golden light flickered on his burly, golden body. An extremely powerful and violent energy would radiate from him from time to time. Although he just stood there casually, his stalwart figure made all the Saint Rulers present feel extremely pressured. At this moment, he seemed like a war god that stood in the world. He gave off the feeling that he was undefeatable. The tremendous presence that radiated from him was no weaker than a Saint Ruler's. Has he broken through? His presence is already comparable to a hermit Saint Ruler. Is he a Heaven Saint Master or a Saint Ruler? Was that seen from before the process of him breaking through to Saint Ruler? Without the descent of the mysteries of the world, without the five-colored rainbow clouds, is he a Saint Ruler or not? Whether it was the hermit Saint Rulers of the various large clans or the supreme experts of the Holy Emperor, they all thought to themselves. They could all sense that Taita was powerful before, but he was only a Heaven Saint Master. Now, he actually possessed the might of a Saint Ruler after what had happened earlier. Without the descent of the mysteries of the world, without the five-colored rainbow clouds, was he breaking through? Or had he been hiding his strength the entire time? A figure fell from the sky. The battle between Bai Hai and Bai Wang had already ended. In the end, Bai Hai was no match for Bai Wang and was heavily injured. He fell from the sky as blood constantly spurted from his mouth. Bai Wang's face was filled with killing intent as he chased after Bai Hai from the sky. He swung his saint weapon, sending a powerful sword chi at Bai Hai. Heavily injured, Bai Hai's strength had been greatly reduced. He struggled to block Bai Wang's sword chi, causing his injuries to worsen. Biju Wang quickly caught up to Bai Hai and used Space Freeze to imprison Bai Hai's figure. The holy weapon in his hand emitted powerful energy fluctuations as it mercilessly pierced towards Bai Hai's head. Mysteries of War, Space Breaker. Taita let out a low growl. The giant axe in his hand emitted a faint golden glow as it chopped down at King Bai in the air. A huge axe visible to the naked eye tore through space and flew toward Bai Wang, infused with an extremely pure battle intent. When the axe collided with Bai Wang's spatial freezing, the space immediately shattered. However, the axe's momentum did not decrease at all as it continued to swing toward Bai Wang. Bai Wang's eyes flashed as he gave up on attacking Bai Hai. Instead, he used his saint weapon to block the axe with a layer of formless worldly energy. When the two collided, a loud rumble erupted. Bai Hai successfully escaped, but Bai Wang's figure was uncontrollably sent flying hundreds of meters away. Bai Wang's expression was calm, as usual. His eyes shone with a sharp light as he stared at Taita below. He coldly said, "Not weak. Unfortunately, you're on Jinshin's side. You won't be able to escape death." As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Wang became one with the space around him. Controlling the power of space, he turned into a faint blur as he lunged at Taita. The saint weapon in his hand shone brightly as it emitted a powerful energy that caused space to tremble. Taita showed no signs of weakness. An extremely pure and powerful battle intent burned fiercely on his body, filled with a strong will to fight and an undefeatable spirit. Both his body and the axe in his hand shone with a golden light as he merged with the axe and slashed at Bai Wang with an unstoppable momentum. Mysteries of War, Art of World Breaker. Boom! Taita's axe and Bai Wang's saint weapon collided fiercely with a deafening explosion. Violent shock waves of energy wreaked havoc, turning the ground into a mess. After the collision, Bai Wang staggered back a dozen steps while Tai Ta's majestic body left the ground and was sent flying. The golden light on his body dimmed for a moment. Bai Wang quickly stabilized himself and stared at Tai Ta with astonishment. He exclaimed, "What powerful strength! You're clearly weaker than me, but you're able to force me back with brute force alone. What kind of cultivation technique is this? It's so strange." If one looked closely, they could clearly see that Bai Wang's right hand was trembling slightly. But soon, Bai Wang's face was filled with killing intent again. He said, "The more extraordinary you are, the more I can't let you live. Die." Bai Wang became one with the space around him and charged at Tai Ta again. In the blink of an eye, he caught up to Tai Ta and used spatial freezing to lock Tai Ta in place. His saint weapon stabbed out with lightning speed. Tai Ta's body shone with golden light as he ignored Bai Wang's spatial freezing and swung his axe again. But this time, the power of his attack was much weaker than before. After the collision, Bai Wang's body trembled violently, but this time, he didn't even take half a step back. On the other hand, Tai Ta staggered back, leaving 2 deep footprints on the ground. "You can actually move freely in my spatial freezing." Bai Wang let out a cry of surprise. His voice was filled with shock, but he didn't hesitate in the slightest as he chased after Tai Ta and attacked again. Mysteries of war, chasing stars and moon. Tai Ta growled. Just as Bai Wang's saint weapon was about to reach him, his body suddenly disappeared and reappeared dozens of meters away. Even though Tai Ta dodged the attack, his left arm was still wounded by the saint weapon of the Shoulder Equal King. A golden liquid immediately flowed out from the wounds. "What? Golden blood?" Bai Wang saw the golden blood flowing out from Tai Ta's wounds and immediately exclaimed. His face was filled with disbelief, as if he had discovered a new continent. How is this possible? How can his blood be golden? The group of saint rulers watching from afar also discovered Tai Ta's uniqueness and cried out in surprise. Tai Ta's expression suddenly changed. The giant axe in his hand suddenly disappeared. He immediately used another hand to tightly cover his wound, covering the golden blood that flowed out from the wound under his giant palm. His face was filled with anxiety. Chapter 944. The king stared at Tai Ta in a daze. He said, golden blood, golden blood. How can there be golden blood? Are you not a human?" "Who says I'm not a human? Aside from being taller than you, how am I not a human?" Tai Ta panicked and hurriedly explained. This was what he worried about the most. He was afraid that others would say that he was not a human, but a monster, an outsider. At this moment, the space in the sky began to distort. A space gate rapidly formed and a middle-aged man in white robes walked out, tearing open a space gate. That's the Holy Emperor's ability. Noticing the space gate in the sky, all the saint rulers' hearts skipped a beat. They could already guess the person's strength. Ming Dong rejoiced when he saw the middle-aged man. He immediately flew toward him and yelled out, Uncle Tian, you've finally appeared." The middle-aged man was the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian. Several dozen experts immediately flew up from the crowd and steadily flew toward Tianjian. Without exception, they were all saint rulers from large clans on the continent. There were even a few experts who had reached the level of the Holy Emperor hidden among them. They stopped 50 meters away from Tianjian and clasped their hands at him. "We greet the Grand Elder." The king also flew up from the ground and politely clasped his hands at Tianjian. He said, "One of the 9 kings of the Farista Empire greets the Grand Elder." The king glanced at Ming Dong from the corner of his eyes from time to time. An extremely cold light was hidden in the depths of his eyes. Great Elder? Could he be the Great Elder of Mercenary City? A few saint rulers who did not recognize Tianjian guessed his identity. They all clasped their hands and bowed to him politely. "Everyone, there's no need to be so polite," Tianjian calmly said to everyone. Tianjian's expression was calm as he spoke to everyone. His eyes immediately looked towards Ming Dong. His calm eyes contained some doting as he said, Not bad. Your strength has improved very quickly over the years. Your cultivation speed is so fast that even your Uncle Tian was far inferior to you when he was your age. Ignoring Ming Dong's excitement, Tian Jian's gaze landed on Tai Ta. When he saw Tai Ta's golden blood, his eyes immediately narrowed, and he furrowed his brows. Golden blood, Tian Jian muttered in a low voice. His eyes revealed a pondering expression. Immediately, he waved his hand. Immediately, an invisible force wrapped around Tai Ta and flew him up. Finally, it stood in front of Tian Jian. Tai Ta, don't be afraid. This is my Uncle Tian. He won't hurt you, Ming Dong said. Tai Ta nodded as he stared at sky, sword anxiously. His hand gripped his wound tightly. However, the golden blood had already seeped through the gaps between his fingers. It was so eye-catching. Tian Jian stared at Tai Ta closely as he studied him. His brows were tightly furrowed as he became surprised and doubtful. Tai Ta, I never thought that you become so powerful. You can even kill saint rulers. All right, what kind of powerful battle skills are the mysteries of war you use, the void-piercing technique and the mortal breaker technique? Why haven't I heard you mention them before? When did you learn such powerful battle skills? They should be high-level heaven-tier battle skills at the very least, right? Ming Dong asked as he stared at Tai Ta curiously. He was filled with doubt as to how Tai Ta could use such powerful battle skills. Tai Ta shook his head in confusion when he heard that. He said in a muffled voice, I don't know what's going on either. I suddenly learned them. What? You suddenly learned them? Ming Dong was stunned. Disbelief filled his face. Mysteries of war, mysteries of war. Tian Jian murmured as he thought hard. He felt like he had seen this term somewhere before. Suddenly, Tian Jian seemed to think of something. His face drastically changed as he stared at Tai Ta in shock. Disbelief filled his eyes. Mysteries of war, golden blood, and the imprint of a battle axe between his eyebrows. Is it that the ancient records of the war god of the 100 races? Jin? Aye. Is he the war god of the 100 races? Tian Jian's heart churned. Even with his mental fortitude, he struggled to remain calm after discovering Tai Ta's secret identity. Uncle Tian, what's wrong? Ming Dong noticed Tian Jian's sudden change in expression and immediately asked out of curiosity. The parallel-shouldered king, the saint rulers who had been paying attention to Tian Jian, and a few Holy Emperor experts noticed Tian Jian's loss of composure as well. They all felt curious, wondering just what had happened to make the Grand Elder of Mercenary City act so abnormally. Even though they were extremely puzzled, no one dared to ask as fearlessly as Ming Dong. Tian Jian sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. At that moment, the way he looked at Tai Ta had undergone an overwhelming change. Ming Dong, is this your friend? Tian Jian asked Ming Dong. Yeah, Uncle Tian, Tai Ta is one of my few friends, and he's Jinshan's friend as well, replied Ming Dong. Tian Jian let out a sigh of relief as he smiled happily. However, he soon sighed inside. Sigh, the ancient winged tiger and the war god of the 100 races have appeared once again. The beast god continent and the 100 races have both given birth to supreme experts, and Poseidon of the sea realm is still alive. Just where are the supreme experts of my Tian Yuan continent? At that moment, Tian Jian suddenly felt extremely uneasy. He was worried for the safety of the Tian Yuan continent. Out of the 4 great races of the world, 3 of them had given birth to supreme experts. Only the Tian Yuan continent had yet to produce one. If the same thing happened again in the ancient times, what power would the Tian Yuan continent have to contend against them? However, what made him feel slightly at ease was that both the winged tiger and the war god of the 100 races maintained good relations with Jinshan and Ming Dong. They had not become enemies. I wonder how Jinshan is doing. He reached Saint Ruler in 20 years. His talent is the most outstanding on our Tian Yuan continent right now, and he knows the barrier's spirit. Is he the future hope of our Tian Yuan continent? Tian Jian thought of Jinshan with a second thought. He immediately felt eager. At this moment, Tian Jian's eyes suddenly narrowed. He said, Tai Ta, Go to Mercenary City first. With that, Tianjin did not ask for Tai Ta's opinion. With a wave of his hand, a powerful force immediately wrapped around Tai Ta, forcefully dragging him into the space gate behind him and disappearing. The expression of the king changed slightly when he saw the person he had to kill, Tai Ta, being sent away by Tianjin. However, he said nothing. Uncle Tian, what are you doing? Ming Dong looked at Tianjin in confusion. As soon as Ming Dong finished speaking, the surrounding space began to distort violently. Afterwards, space gates appeared one after another. Experts of various ages walked out from the space gates. They were all from the 10 Protector clans. At that moment, the people of the 10 Protector clans gathered above Flame City. Although they were not the most powerful people in the clan, they were all supreme experts on par with the Holy Emperor. A space gate appeared beside Bai Jian as well. His father, Bai Yifei, walked out. Bai Yifei was rather pale and haggard. Back in the Sea Realm, he and the great elder of the Yuan sect had been injured by Jinshin's god's descent. Even now, they had yet to recover. Tianjin stared at the people of the Protector clans calmly and gently said, I never thought that all the people of the Protector clans would come. Grand Elder, since Jinshin is Changyang Shodan, and Changyang Shodan is a member of the Protector clans of Changyang Prefecture, the flame mercenaries he founded outside has already broken the rules set down by his Protector clans. As a result, they must be eliminated. We are dealing with the matters of our clans right now, so I hope that Mercenary City will not interfere with the matters of our Protector clans. A great elder of the Yuan sect clasped his hands at Tianjin. At this moment, another space gate appeared. 2 old men with white hair and ruddy complexions walked out. They stepped through the air and arrived before Tianjin with a single step. They were the 3rd and 4th elders of Mercenary City. Grand Elder, our Mercenary City cannot interfere with the matters of the Tian Yuan continent. We cannot forget the rules set down by the City Lord all those years ago, said the 3rd elder of Mercenary City. Grand Elder, the rules set down by the City Lord all those years ago state that he can only appear to stop large-scale internal conflicts when our Tian Yuan continent is under threat and prevent our strength from weakening. However, a small conflict like this is not enough for us to interfere. At the same time, this is an internal matter of the Protector clans, so our Mercenary City cannot interfere, advised the 4th elder of Mercenary City. Ming Dong immediately became worried when he heard that. He said, Uncle Tian, we spent several years of effort and painstaking effort to build this city. You can't let it be taken away by someone else. Tian Jin gently sighed. After a moment of thought, he said, Ming Dong, your Uncle Tian can't help you with this matter. Uncle Tian. Ming Dong refused to give up. He still wanted to plead. However, before he could say anything, Tianjin interrupted him. All of this is because of Jinshin. Only Jinshin can change this situation. Once he has enough strength, he'll naturally take back the city. Ming Dong, follow me back to Mercenary City. Cultivate well there, and I will use the rest of my time to teach you. With that, Tianjin forcefully took Ming Dong away without even asking for his opinion. They returned to Mercenary City through a space gate. With Tianjin's departure, the 3rd and 4th elders left as well. They did not stay for too long. Kong, come back with us. Chanyang Zuyin Xiao looked at Chanyang Zuyin Kong. His voice was filled with helplessness. Chanyang Zuyin Kong had already returned to the city walls with Yu and Bai Lian. Hearing that, Chanyang Zuyin Kong immediately became furious. He said, Father, are you just going to watch the city your great-grandson spent so many years building be destroyed like this? Kong, when Jinshin was not a member of the Protector clan in the past, it had nothing to do with us no matter how powerful the organization he created was. However, since he's a member of the Protector clan now, he needs to follow the rules set down by the Protector clan. I hope you can understand, Changyang Zuyin Xiao sighed. It was not that he did not want to protect the city that was completely forged from tungsten alloy, but with the rules, he could not do anything about it. This was because once the rules were broken, their Changyang prefecture would face pressure from the other 9 Protector clans.